After the cataclysm, the sky was covered with a strange haze most of the time. The schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang Jinglin, said that a huge amount of dust particles were blasted into the sky during the cataclysm. It not only blocked sunlight for photosynthesis, but the climate also became extremely cold, and acid rains were a frequent phenomenon as well. The situation had gradually improved in recent decades, with the sun being visible for most of the year now. Ren Xiaosu's clinic was across from the grocery store. The moment he opened his door, he saw Wang Fuegui coming out of his store with 2 freshly baked sweet potatoes in his hands. "Xiaosu, come, have some sweet potatoes." Ren Xiaosu couldn't help but sigh. Before this, he found it difficult to even ask for a free needle to sew his clothes with from old Wang. Even free thread for sewing clothes was impossible to get, let alone a needle. But now this Scrooge took the initiative to offer him sweet potatoes. Ren Xiaosu looked at how cheerful Wang Fuegui was. Since someone gave him a gift, he should probably give something back to reciprocate, right? He smacked his lips and said, "I don't have much to give in return, but I've got plenty of anesthetics to go around. Why don't I give you a free shot of it? How can you offer to give me a shot of something like that?" Wang Fuegui's expression darkened. He asked, "Say, you haven't been out to gather any medicinal herbs for the past few days. Would you happen to still have any of that medicine left?" "Yes, I've got anti-inflammatory pills, anesthetics, and cough and mucus medicine," Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. "I mean, do you still have that black medicine available?" Wang Fuegui was slightly embarrassed. "Didn't you just buy some not long ago?" Ren Xiaosu asked knowingly. "That was for the big shots in the stronghold, so stop acting dumb. If I didn't send the medicine in, do you think you would have taken over this clinic so easily?" Wang Fuegui complained. "To tell you the truth, I was only planning to give it to Chen Heidong at the beginning. I don't understand how it made its way into Boss Luo's hands in the end." Wang Fuegui did not really understand how the black medicine made its way up the ranks. He wondered how many more dosages were left by the time it got delivered into Boss Luo's hands. "Here." Ren Xiaosu took out 2 small porcelain vials. Yesterday, he bought a small vial of black medicine to treat Yan Liuyuan's fever. There were still 2 dosages left, so he separated them into different packaging a while ago. 1,200 yuan, and not a single yuan less. "I'll be sending one of these vials into the stronghold." Wang Fuegui stared. "Don't you feel embarrassed about how much you're charging me? Take it or leave it." Ren Xiaosu prepared to put the black medicine back into his pocket. In the end, Wang Fuegui did not hesitate. He decisively held Ren Xiaosu's arm and completed the transaction with cash. After that, Wang Fuegui even thanked him. Gratitude received from Wang Fuegui, +1. Ren Xiaosu felt that Wang Fuegui was quite an interesting person. His 2 thank yous so far had earned Ren Xiaosu 2 gratitude tokens. However, Ren Xiaosu found it a little pitiful to give away the medicine just like that. Also, why were his gratitude tokens dwindling? He only had 4 tokens left. But he weighed the pros and cons. As he wanted Yan Liuyuan and Big Sister Xiao to have a better life in town, it was essential to foster ties with people in the stronghold. Besides, the black medicine was not exactly given away for nothing, so why not? Thinking this, Ren Xiaosu sighed. He would have to see if he could gain more gratitude from the people now that he had been appointed as the clinic's doctor. Ren Xiaosu's top priority was to go out to gather more medicinal herbs. As he was a cautious person, he had to pull out all the stops. It would be bad if he aroused the suspicion of others. Otherwise, when people talked about him in the future, they might just go, "So-and-so superpower is to make an iceberg appear out of thin air and drop it on a city, while so-and-so has a power that can cut through mountains." Meanwhile, when they talked about Ren Xiaosu, they would say, "His superpower is to create that kind of medicine." That would be too damn embarrassing. After Ren Xiaosu reached the wilderness, he couldn't help but look for where he buried the pistol. He had to be sure that no one else found it before he could feel at ease. The handgun was now the greatest reliance he had. He couldn't let any of his plan go wrong. Even though he possessed a strength of 4.5 and dexterity of 4.1 now, humans still couldn't outrun or win against a gun. When Ren Xiaosu returned to the clinic carrying a bamboo basket on his back, he saw Xiao looking uncomfortable trying to help a couple who had come to the clinic for a consultation. The moment she saw that Ren Xiaosu had returned, she turned her eyes to him, signaling for help. "Xiaosu, attend to the patients quickly." Ren Xiaosu placed the bamboo basket on the ground and asked, "What injuries do the two of you have? I'll have you know you've come to the right place." "That's great." The man said, "We aren't injured, but my wife, who's 4 months pregnant, suddenly got some pain in her stomach this morning. I was afraid that something might have happened, so we came to see if you could treat her." Ren Xiaosu froze. Although he was a doctor, he had no idea how to treat something like this. In these current times, there was no such thing as andrology and gynecology. The mindset of the refugees in town was to go to the clinic whenever they felt ill. This put Ren Xiaosu in a difficult position. He had said those boastful words and was now faced with the expectations of the couple, so surely he could not disgrace himself, right? Ren Xiaosu tried hard to remember the lessons that Mr. Zhang had taught in school and the books that he had read there to think of a way to deal with this problem he was facing. What would doctors commonly say to expectant mothers and their family members? Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought. "Do you want to save the mother or the baby?" The couple was confused. The man grew furious. "You're a quack, right? My wife is only experiencing some stomach pain and you asking me whether I want to save the mother or the baby. The problem is, my wife is only 4 months pregnant. Where would I put the baby if I chose to save it?" Ren Xiaosu thought it sounded quite logical. This time he said with a sigh, "I'm really sorry to the two of you. I was in the wrong. To be honest, I don't know a thing about gynecology. If I continued fooling you, that would be unforgivable." The previous doctor also wouldn't know how to treat her since he really was a quack. It had to be said that Ren Xiaosu could easily kill someone without blinking his eyes if they deserved to die, but he couldn't do something against his conscience like lying to an expectant mother. Ren Xiaosu continued, "My suggestion is that you go to school and borrow some books from Mr. Zhang to read and let your wife eat and drink well most days. Then it will depend on fate for whether she gives birth smoothly or not. I won't con any money from you too. On top of that, don't go around buying random medicine from other people. I know that you shouldn't take any medicine when you're pregnant. There's a high probability that it will lead to malformation of the child in the womb. If you don't believe me, you can check with Mr. Zhang or borrow some books from him on how to prevent a miscarriage." The couple looked at each other as they did not expect Ren Xiaosu to say something like that. The man thought for a while. "I feel that you're a little better than the previous doctor. The last time I got sick, he was so afraid that I wouldn't buy his medicine. However, my health did not improve even after taking his medicine. I had to pull through and recover by myself." The pregnant woman stood up and said with a smile, "Thank you, doctor. Gratitude received from Qin Jiajia, +1. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He did almost nothing this time, but he still gained a gratitude out of the blue. Both Yan Liuyuan and he had the mindset that people would only be grateful if they were given something for free. Ren Xiaosu had attended one of Mr. Zhang Jinglan's class where he described how great human civility used to be. This made him wonder why the graciousness that took several thousand years to build up had collapsed so quickly. Today, this couple made Ren Xiaosu gain a vague understanding. However, he could not quite put a finger on what it was. On the same day, Ren Xiaosu had Xiao take down the sign that was hung outside the clinic to sew on the additional word wounds before the word clinic. He'd lied, cheated, and stolen many times, but he only did them selectively. Today, Ren Xiaosu made a decision. From now on, he would only treat illnesses that he could treat. If he couldn't, then so be it. In the end, none of the patients that came today suffered from any sort of wounds. Instead, all of them had aches and ailments that he did not know how to treat. To his surprise, when he told these patients that he honestly couldn't do anything for them, he still managed to raise the number of gratitude tokens to 10 at the end of the day, without even having to use any of the black medicine. Ren Xiaosu sat in the clinic in a state of confusion. What the fuck was going on? He didn't know everyone had accumulated grievances with the previous doctor, Yu Tong, over a long period of time. Through Ren Xiaosu's actions, those who had gone to seek treatment from him started publicizing him. I think ruthless Ren Xiaosu is a much better person than that previous bastard of a doctor, Yu Tong. If he doesn't know how to treat your illness, he will never try to make money off you by prescribing medicine on a whim. When some busybodies heard about this, they thought, wow, there's even something like that. Then they went to the clinic to check it out. While they had their fun, Ren Xiaosu was feeling hard done by. The number of patients that consulted him exceeded the number of gratitude tokens he earned by at least 10 times. Some of them complained of headaches while others thought that their faces had suddenly swelled up. The fact that someone even came to him to get their fortune told left Ren Xiaosu speechless. But once Ren Xiaosu made up his mind on something, he would make sure to do it. He advised the townspeople and sent them away like how he had explained things to the couple. Afterwards, the townspeople realized that Ren Xiaosu really did not charge at a whim for his medical services. Their initial impression of Ren Xiaosu was that he was a very ruthless person. This was because the young Ren Xiaosu had to take care of Yan Liuyuan and wanted to gain a foothold in this town. As such, he had to compete bravely and ruthlessly against others to have even a slim chance of survival. Later, everyone's impression of him changed to drug dealer. But right now, everyone was beginning to think that if they ever received a wound, they would immediately go to the clinic to get treated by Ren Xiaosu. Such word of mouth had come from nowhere and puzzled Ren Xiaosu greatly. At noon, Xiao went to town with her basket to buy some groceries. During this recent period, they could afford the better things in life as their savings reached 3,400 yuan. As such, they could also get better raw ingredients from the town's market. Xiao would even buy some fine salt and pigskin occasionally. The texture of fine salt in the mouth was quite different from that of coarse salt, while oil from the pigskin was extracted to be used for frying. There were pig farms located outside of this town. Domesticated pigs had also evolved after the cataclysm, but as long as they were neutered while they were young, they would grow up to be very docile animals. Without a doubt, humans were the most adaptable species and were good at utilizing the environment around them. No other species came close. Usually, the good meat from these pigs was shipped into the stronghold for consumption. Only a tiny quantity of the remainder would remain in town for sale. In the past, Yan Liuyuan dreamed of getting into the stronghold as one of his biggest wishes was to eat meat. Xiao returned to the clinic with a basket full of vegetables. The moment she came in, she beamed and said, my, Xiaosu, do you know that the townspeople are praising you to the high heavens? Ren Xiaosu was a little surprised. Really? Yet. Xiao smiled and started cutting up the vegetables. Our Xiaosu has become a doctor now, so your future wife will surely be the best possible candidate in town. When you get married and have children, I'll help you take care of them. Ren Xiaosu grew uncomfortable. I've never thought about that before. Xiao got upset. How old do you think you are? It's time you started thinking about it. Oh, I also bought some peanuts today. I wonder where the townspeople dug them up from. I'll cook some for both of you in a bit. At this moment, Yan Liuyuan came back from school. Nowadays, he could also eat lunch when he returned home at noon just like the other students. He used to bring 2 potatoes with him to school every morning and eat them for lunch. After coming through the door, he spotted some peanuts in the basket and immediately picked one up. But before he could shell it, Xiao slapped it out of his hand. Don't you eat that! There's still dirt on it. Yan Liuyuan angrily banged on the table. Why is a person as beautiful as you stopping me from having peanuts? Sister Xiaohu broke into a smile again and said, all right, you can eat them. While shelling the peanuts, Yan Liuyuan told Ren Xiaosu, bro, a lot of people gathered outside the school today. During our classes, Mr. Zhang wouldn't allow any of them in. But as soon as classes finished, all of them rushed in. I don't even know what happened. Do you want to go and have a look? Ah! Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. Then an ominous feeling rose inside him. A familiar figure angrily made his way in. It was the school teacher, Mr. Zhang Jinglin. Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. Mr. Zhang, you're here? Would you like to join us for lunch? Lunch? My ass! Zhang Jinglin said angrily, if you can't treat the illness, then don't do it. Why did you have to direct everyone to go and look for me? Ren Xiaosu had said to the couple, if you don't believe me, you can check with Mr. Zhang or borrow some books from him on how to prevent a miscarriage. As Ren Xiaosu felt that this method was pretty useful, he gave the same advice to every patient who consulted him during the morning. Zhang Jinglin said resentfully, if they were just normal illnesses, I could have let it slide. But you even referred someone with athlete's foot to me. You don't know just how bad it smelled when that guy took off his shoes. Fortunately, I was able to escape in time. Ren Xiaosu was embarrassed. He smiled apologetically. That's only because I think you're knowledgeable and learned. Zhang Jinglin was on the verge of a breakdown. I'm just a teacher. If you can't treat the illness, do you think I can treat it? If you push any more patients onto me in the future, I will make sure to give Yan Liuyuan endless homework to do. Yan Liuyuan was still shelling peanuts and was confused. Why are you dragging me into your conflict? Ren Xiaosu grabbed some peanuts and stuffed them into Zhang Jinglin's hands. Don't worry, I won't do that anymore. I really won't, I promise. Zhang Jinglin thought for a while before returning to the school while shelling and munching on the peanuts. Yan Liuyuan was sleeping soundly next to him. During the afternoon class, the students wanted Ren Xiaosu to share more of his stories about the wolves due to the recent incident in town. For example, they wanted to know what they should do or how they could escape if they ever encountered a wolf pack. However, Ren Xiaosu did not want to talk about this and continued sharing his knowledge of wilderness survival with the students. He felt that if there came a day that these children encountered wolves in the wilderness, they were more likely to perish than anything. The physical differences between humans and today's beasts ensured such an outcome. That was not something that he could help with by teaching them. Rather than teaching them how to hunt and kill wild animals, it was better to teach them how to find food and water to preserve their lives if they did not encounter the wolves. Being killed by the wolves was a kind of helplessness. But if they starved to death, that would be too unworthy. Most unforgivable was not that the contents of the lecture were not to the expectations of the students, but that Ren Xiaosu held the class behind to give the lesson. This led the students becoming aggravated with him. They even went home and complained to their parents. But what the students did not know was that while they did not dare to provoke Ren Xiaosu, their parents were also afraid of doing so. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu heard an unusual noise coming from behind the yard's wall. The person who made that sound seemed to be extremely cautious about something. However, someone like Ren Xiaosu, who had often survived out in the wilderness, had to be alert to any sound or movement. He might die if he wasn't. He immediately blew out the kerosene lamp in the room and quietly made his way into the yard. Ren Xiaosu hid at the bottom of the wall and carefully listened to the movements on the other side. He heard someone leap onto the wall from outside. That person grabbed the top of the wall with their hands and then pulled themselves up with both hands before finally leaping over the wall and into the yard. While still in midair, the man looked down at the ground and happened to spot Ren Xiaosu, who was sizing him up with a curious look. The next second, he saw Ren Xiaosu fall into a squat and draw his arms back. It was as though he was gathering up all of his strength before letting it burst. He threw a punch that could split a mountain apart, aiming it straight at the crotch of the uninvited guest. The uninvited guest tried to dodge the attack. He was quite skillful and could easily counter the danger by putting his knees together and using them to strike Ren Xiaosu. But Ren Xiaosu was much quicker than he expected. Wait, ah! The uninvited guest lost his balance and fell to the ground in pain. He clutched his privates and chuffed in agony. At this moment, footfalls thudded from outside. It seemed like more than one person had come. Ren Xiaosu looked calmly at the person who was lying on the ground. He could not tell the identity of the person from his attire. A second later, another two figures jumped in. Wait, ah! Fuck! Another two people were left rolling on the ground. Ren Xiaosu frowned. If he had to give an assessment of their skills, it was probably just average. But if he were blunt, these people would not even last one round against him. Someone knocked on the front door. A familiar voice said, "Open up." Ren Xiaosu remembered this voice. It was the officer who had led the private army to search the entire town. Suddenly, he realized that these people were from the strongholds' private army. However, Ren Xiaosu could not understand why these people were so weak. In reality, they weren't weak. Although the strongholds' private troops often neglected their training, normal people couldn't deal with them so easily. These private troops had heard from someone that Ren Xiaosu was well known for being ruthless. But from their point of view, how strong could a refugee be? Xiaoyu and Yan Liuyuan, who were sound asleep in the house, had been woken up. They put on their clothes and came out to see what the commotion was about. "What's the matter? Get back into the house." Ren Xiaosu then went to open the door for the officer. He wondered why the private army's troops would intrude on their property by climbing over the wall while dressed in civilian clothing. It was quite obvious that they were trying to catch him off guard and had come back to check on the most suspicious person in the missing gun case. Perhaps these private troops were eager to answer to the higher UPS but were also afraid of offending Boss Luo. It would be fine if they could find the evidence. Boss Luo was not the only person who called the shots in Stronghold 113. Besides, he might not necessarily think that highly of Ren Xiaosu. But if they could not find the gun, they might end up facing the wrath of Boss Luo. Logically speaking, after getting searched the first time, and with Boss Luo's influence in this matter, most people would not expect the private troops to return again and continue the search. What if he had brought the gun back with him when he went out to gather medicinal herbs the previous time? Then he would have placed himself in great danger. According to Wang Fugui, the factory manager that he had killed was also from quite an influential family within the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu frowned. They were trespassing on his property tonight. Furthermore, this was the second time they were searching him. Based on the circumstances, he should be in the right. However, who could he possibly reason with here, outside of the stronghold? Reasoning was determined by the size of one's fist, but his fist was not big enough yet. Ren Xiaosu had beaten up 3 of the soldiers in a single breath, so he felt that they would not let the matter slide so easily. After this incident, Ren Xiaosu knew that he would have to remind himself to be even more cautious and not underestimate anyone at all. In fact, the officer who was standing at the door with about a dozen men was also enraged. He could not accept the fact that his soldiers could not even handle a simple refugee like Ren Xiaosu and that he had to come in to save them. If this got out, his reputation would take a big hit. So there had to be a conclusion to this matter today. Right when he was about to tell his men to kick the door open, the clinic's door opened by itself. The soldiers standing outside the door were confused. They saw Ren Xiaosu wrapped in a large banner that had the words "Magic Hands Restore Spring from Luolan" on it. The officer fell silent for a while, then laughed in spite of himself. What was this? Using the banner to protect himself. Ren Xiaosu was on full alert as he scrutinized the officer's expression. He was mainly worried that the officer would get impulsive and take revenge even though he saw the banner that was wrapped around his body. However, the officer skirted around him and went straight in. Search. Ren Xiaosu followed them and said, "Didn't you already search me?" The officer's expression darkened when he saw his soldiers still rolling around in the yard. Bunch of good-for-nothings. He turned to Ren Xiaosu. "My name is Wang Kongyang. If you want to get Boss Luo to stand up for you, you can tell him my name." "How can I?" Ren Xiaosu grinned sarcastically and said, "It's not like you've done anything wrong." Wang Kongyang sized up Ren Xiaosu. After several minutes of searching by his men, they came out and reported, "We couldn't find anything." Wang Kongyang immediately led his soldiers out. Before he left, he turned around and smiled ambiguously at Ren Xiaosu. "If only you were born in the stronghold. That would have been great. You make a much better soldier than this bunch of wastes of space." "Wait a minute." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. The factory manager was named Wang Dongyang. Could it be that this Wang Kongyang was related to him in some way? No wonder this man did not give up on investigating him. It was because he was trying to track down the murderer. At dawn, Ren Xiaosu opened the clinic's door and saw Wang Fugui sweeping the grocery store with a broom. When Wang Fugui saw him, he put the broom aside and walked over. He lowered his voice and asked, "What happened last night?" "It was nothing." Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "The stronghold's private army still suspects me and conducted another search." Wang Fugui spat in anger. He said indignantly, "They always treat us refugees as thieves. Even after I told them that you had the backing of Boss Luo, they still dared to come and search a second time." All right, you can stop putting on an act." Ren Xiaosu looked at Wang Fugui in a speechless manner. "Why are you feeling so disgruntled for me?" Wang Fugui started to laugh. "You can rest assured that you'll be all right. I've sent a new batch of black medicine into the stronghold." Right at this moment, a man sprinted over with a bleeding arm. When the man was still a distance away from the clinic, he shouted, "Doctor! Please save me!" The man was probably frightened because his arm was bleeding heavily. However, Ren Xiaosu knew at a glance that this man's wound was nothing serious. In town, nothing serious meant not having to die. It had to be said that the refugees had quite a broad outlook on life. Other than matters concerning life and death, nothing was considered too serious. Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "Come in. You're not that badly hurt, so you won't die. How did you get injured?" "I was on my way to work at the factory, but I realized that I had forgotten to bring something. I ended up going back home to get it, but I discovered that there was someone in my shack stealing my stuff. I tried to catch him, but he slashed me with his knife," the man explained. "Doctor, will I really be all right? I've already lost so much blood." "You'll be fine," Ren Xiaosu said calmly. When the man heard that he would not die, he calmed down a little. Ren Xiaosu took another look at his wound and wondered if he should use the anesthetics that he recently received and had yet to use. Ren Xiaosu looked at the man and said, "We have anesthetics here. After the injection, you won't feel any pain while we're treating the wound." "Is that so?" The man was taken aback. "Do I have to pay for it?" "Of course." Ren Xiaosu snapped. "Would I give you such an expensive drug if I didn't need you to pay? Look at the size of your wound. It's at least 10 centimeters long. You're gonna die from the pain if I sew it up with a needle on a wound this long." Ren Xiaosu was actually telling the truth. As the wound was too large, he would have to be very careful when applying the black medicine on it. Otherwise, a single dosage would not even be enough. So he was truly worried that this man would not be able to tolerate the pain. At this moment, Xiaohu came out holding a metallic tray with a syringe and a small bottle of anesthetics on it. The syringe was from the equipment that was left behind in the clinic. Due to the state of medical treatment available, they did not have any disposable syringes and needles. Therefore, they had to properly disinfect the equipment each time they used them. Based on best practices, this was definitely the wrong way of doing it. But what could Ren Xiaosu do about that? The best he could do was to disinfect the equipment properly, like sterilizing the needle over a flame for a little longer. This time, Xiao waited for the needle to cool down before she used it to suture the wound. But just as she was about to use it, she had a dilemma. Xiaosu, should I administer the anesthetic inside or outside the wound? They had never used anesthetics before, so Xiao was wondering whether the anesthetic would be more effective if it was administered into the wound. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He had also not thought about it before. I'm not sure. The man beside them listened to their conversation and nearly pissed his pants. So you've never used anesthetics before? Do you even know how to treat wounds in the first place? The man had heard before that Ren Xiaosu could treat wounds. Coupled with Ren Xiaosu's good reputation in town, he immediately thought of coming here to get himself looked at. However, it didn't seem like that was the case. So where should I administer it, Xiaosu? Xiao asked. Ren Xiaosu saw the patient's expression and gave it some thought. Why don't you administer it on his leg instead? Prevent him from running away afterwards. The patient was surprised. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. Quest, successfully treat 20 patients. Even though Ren Xiaosu had completed the repeatable quest for the third time by successfully treating 10 patients throughout the day, his gratitude tokens fell from 10 to 8. Many of the patients did not give him any gratitude even after they had been successfully treated. However, Ren Xiaosu felt that his life was extraordinarily enriching. During the morning, he would attend to patients at the clinic. During the afternoon, he would take over his duties as the substitute teacher at school. At night, he would chat with Xiao and Yan Liuyuan out in the yard. He had tilled the soil in the yard and planned to plant some vegetables. One of his greatest wishes from before was to have a yard he could plant scallions, garlic seedlings, and various vegetables. Right now, Ren Xiaosu felt that his strength had almost doubled to that of a normal adult male, and his muscle had become denser. Ren Xiaosu asked his mind palace, "What are my current strength and dexterity?" The voice from the palace answered, "You have a strength of 5.5 and a dexterity of 4.1. Ren Xiaosu did not say anything. It seemed that his attributes were relatively balanced for now, and it was unlikely that he would suddenly look like a beefcake. Yan Liuyuan suddenly asked, "Bro, why didn't you treat all the patients? Every one of them represents money to be made." Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "I don't know how to treat them." The previous doctor didn't know how to treat them either, yet he still treated everyone who came to the clinic. Yan Liuyuan thought about it and questioned him again. "We can't learn from him." Ren Xiaosu explained, "Take a look at his current plight. Did anyone offer to help him when he was in trouble? As people, we need to have inviolable principles. But if something happens to us, others may not help either," Yan Liuyuan muttered with his head lowered. "Since they won't help us, why should we be so kind to them? These days, there are a lot of people who can't wait to see us fall." Ren Xiaosu looked at Yan Liuyuan with a serious expression. He knew that Yan Liuyuan was still young and that his values were still in their formative stage. The environment Yan Liuyuan lived in had ensured he would suffer plenty of malice from the outside world. Ren Xiaosu had to admit that Yan Liuyuan was right. In this era, everyone was selfish. Selfishness was such a natural thing that even the intention to harm others was seen as normal. But Ren Xiaosu had to make Yan Liuyuan understand that they should not be like the others just because it was the norm. "Liuyuan, remember this. Ren Xiaosu said seriously, "Don't let the sorrows of our era become your sorrow as well." Yan Liuyuan fell deep into thought while Xiao looked at the two brothers with glistening eyes. She suddenly felt that as long as Ren Xiaosu was with Yan Liuyuan, he would never take a wrong path in his life. A hubbub burst from outside. Someone exclaimed, "The band is back. Didn't they go to Stronghold 112? Why did they come back? Right, and that guy who went as their guide isn't among them anymore." Ren Xiaosu looked up and suddenly thought of the cap-wearing girl with perfect firearms proficiency. Calculating the time, it was probably only a week since the band left. So, they couldn't have reached Stronghold 112 at all. In fact, they wouldn't even have reached the foot of the Jing Mountains. In theory, there shouldn't be any danger along the way other than the wolves. But the appearance of the wolves here in town was staggered with the band's timing. If the band had actually encountered the wolf pack, they probably wouldn't have made it back alive. After all, the wolves were no longer afraid of gunshots. When he remembered the wolves, Ren Xiaosu got a little worried. When the subject of the wolves was brought up during a conversation with Wang Fugui yesterday, Wang Fugui revealed that he learned some news from one of the town administrators, Chen Haidong. He said that the wolves had suffered heavy casualties after ambushing the private troops, and the entire wolf pack had retreated in the direction of Stronghold 111 to hide in Mount Yang. They presumed that the wolves would not dare to come back here again. However, Ren Xiaosu did not think so. The wolves had also gone away once before, but didn't they still come back? And they were even more ferocious than ever. What had caused these wolves to evolve again? Ren Xiaosu didn't know. Ren Xiaosu was watching the commotion through the clinic's window. He saw the refugees in town coming out of their shacks as they watched silently. They were very curious about the band initially, but when they realized that something might have happened to them, they became even more curious. When the band departed from here, they had with them 4 off-road vehicles. However, only one of those was left, and it was even moving slowly. The stronghold's celebrity, Luo Xinyu, and 3 private soldiers sat in it while others followed behind on foot. Their outfits were all torn to pieces. Yan Liuyuan wondered, when they left, they were all prim and proper. Now that they're back, why have they become like us? Although their current lives had improved, there was still a lack of water. The refugees were always treated equally when it came to the allocation of any water. The stronghold was very strict about this administration. So if there was any excess water at home, Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan would automatically let Xiao use it to wash up. Meanwhile, they would brush their teeth with a little bit of the water. What it really meant to brush teeth was to dip a willow twig into some coarse salt and scrape their teeth with it. After brushing for some time, they would then gargle water in their mouths to rinse. When the dirty-looking Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan saw that the people in the band had also become like them, they felt a little happy on the inside. The cap-wearing girl with perfect firearms proficiency was also walking behind the off-road vehicle with holes all over her clothes. But when Ren Xiaosu examined her, he realized that although she looked pathetic just like everyone else in the band, her steps were still light and steady. From this observation alone, the cap-wearing girl was much stronger than the accompanying private troops. Of course, this was also what Ren Xiaosu had expected. After all, how could someone with perfect firearms proficiency be outshone by those private troops? The celebrity, Luo Xinyu, who was in the off-road vehicle, ordered, "Run along and report to the stronghold that we're going in. Don't let these refugees look at us like we're monkeys." When the private troops received this order, they pointed the black muzzles of their automatic rifles at the refugees. One of them said ruthlessly, "Return to your respective pigsties." When the refugees saw the private troops getting ready to take action after being annoyed, the refugees hid back into their shacks. "Another thing," Luo Xinyu said coldly, "go and find that Wang Fugui." The clamor of voices in town died away. Everyone only dared to talk in whispers within their own shacks. If they felt that chatting among the family was not enough, they could also chat with their next-door neighbors through the curtain doors. Those were not soundproof anyway. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan were leaning on the windowsill as they looked outside. They saw that the band was divided into 2 groups. One group went to process the clearance for entry into the stronghold while another headed straight for Wang Fugui's grocery store. "Bro, why are they looking for old Wang?" Yan Liuyuan asked. They could be looking to settle the score with him. He was the one who recommended the guide, after all. That hunter who went as their guide didn't come back with them, so who knows whether he was the one who led them into trouble and made them have to come back earlier in such a pathetic state. Ren Xiaosu gave a rough assessment of the situation. Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips sympathetically. When the guide was leaving town, he had given Ren Xiaosu a pompous look. But who could have known it would turn out to be farewell for him? Ren Xiaosu saw the group of people knocking on the door at Wang Fugui's grocery store. Wang Fugui leisurely opened it from the inside and seemed to be quite calm. Ren Xiaosu had been a little worried about Wang Fugui. However, when he saw him looking so calm, he thought that maybe there wasn't a need to worry for him. The people in the off-road vehicle got out as well. Luo Xinyu was dressed in white casual wear, or rather, it had been white at first. She stared at Wang Fugui and questioned, "What kind of guide did you recommend to us?" Wang Fugui asked, "What's the matter?" He was truly a little curious. Since that person was supposedly an experienced hunter, it was unlikely that he would make any rookie mistakes. So why were these people so angry? "You dare to ask what's the matter?" Luo Xinyu said coldly. "Before we could even get near the Jing Mountains, he had taken us in the wrong direction. We couldn't figure out our exact location even after trying for 3 days. A lot of people knew that it was possible to drive to the Jing Mountains because there was a gravel road in the canyon where there likely had been a riverbed. But for some reason, that river had dried up. Of course, ordinary cars couldn't go on this road. But it wasn't difficult at all for off-road vehicles. This showed that the guide was not even able to lead the band to that road. So, where is he now?" Old Wang asked startled. "He died before he could find the way." A private soldier said coldly, "As a hunter from around here, he didn't even know that there was danger in the waters. When he went to wash up at the riverbank in the morning, his face got bitten to a bloody pulp by something. When we found him, he was already dead. What's more, there were so many cruel monkeys on the route that he took us by. We almost didn't make it back alive." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. No, there was something very wrong here. He had never heard of any fish in the nearby rivers that bit people. Was it really a fish? Wang Fugui leaned against the doorframe of the grocery store and said, "Oh, so that's what happened at? But I probably won't have time to find you a new guide. I have to get something done for Boss Luo Lan." In reality, Boss Luo hadn't arranged any tasks for him. He was just trying to let them know that he was in the care of Boss Luo. The private troops started frowning, and even Luo Xinyu was shocked to hear that. They didn't expect the man they wanted to teach a lesson to be backed by Luo Lan. Relaxed, Wang Fugui said, "I told you a long time ago that if you are looking to get there, you have to find Ren Xiaosu. That guy who's sick in the head." A private soldier frowned deeply. "That kid who fantasized about being a doctor." Wang Fugui suddenly felt a little awkward. He pointed at the window of the clinic across the way. "Perhaps, none of you expected it, but he has really become a doctor." Luo Xinyu and the private troops were surprised. Everyone looked in the direction Wang Fugui was pointing. They saw 2 dirty-looking faces leaning on the windowsill of the clinic curiously looking back at them. Honestly, Wang Fugui was also feeling a little emotional at this moment. He thought, "That's right, just how did this kid suddenly end up becoming a doctor?" But he wasn't going to tell them that since he wanted to entirely distance himself from the matter. "Y'all were saying that I recommended someone who was sick in the head to be your guide, but I didn't. Just look, he really is a doctor. That can't be right. Let me try to remember." A soldier from the private army thought for a while and said, "What did he say the last time we saw him?" "Congratulations! Father and child are both doing fine. The baby weighs 3.24 kilograms, someone answered. "That's right, who says something like father and child are both doing fine?" That soldier said angrily, "Someone like that can even become a doctor in this town." Seeing them recall word for word what Ren Xiaosu said, Wang Fugui explained, "Aren't we living in conditions where medical treatment is not so good? But it's absolutely true. He is indeed our town's doctor. If you don't believe me, you can ask the people around here. Wang Fugui then walked a few houses down. He knocked on a random door and asked, "Is Ren Xiaosu our town's doctor?" The person who answered the door was taken aback momentarily. "Yes, he is." "How are his medical skills?" Wang Fugui asked again. That person gave him a thumbs up. Who in town is not praising Ren Xiaosu these days? The band members were lost in thought again. They turned their heads back towards the clinic and saw that there was no one at the window anymore. "You were saying that he's the only person who can bring people through the Jing Mountains?" asked Luo Xinyu, having calmed down. "Yes." Wang Fugui gave it some thought and said with a smile, "Actually, I can't guarantee that he'll take you through. But if even he can't do it, no one else in this town can get you there." "You're almost praising him to the high heavens." Luo Xinyu sneered, "Tell him that he has been recruited. We'll set off again after we've rested and reorganized the group." "Don't, there's no use telling me about this." Wang Fugui gave a sheepish smile and said, "If you want to recruit him, you'll have to seek Boss Luo's permission." "Boss Luo? How's he related to Boss Luo?" Luo Xinyu was stunned. "I don't know the exact details, but you definitely can't just recruit and use him as you please," Wang Fugui stated. Luo Xinyu snorted in disgust. At this moment, the soldiers who reported back to the stronghold returned with news that they could enter. Soldiers stationed atop the stronghold walls slowly raised the portcullis. Without another word, Luo Xinyu led her group back into the stronghold. Wang Fugui patted his chest in relief. In fact, he had been afraid that they would try to settle the score with him. But fortunately for him, he had struck up a good relationship with Boss Luo because of the black medicine. If he did not throw this name out today, he would probably have gotten severely punished even if he would not have to die. In reality, even Wang Fugui himself was unsure of how powerful Boss Luo was in the stronghold. But whenever he threw this name around, he could get a deep sense of how damn useful it was. Wang Fugui went to knock on the clinic's door as he wanted to discuss the matter with Ren Xiaosu. But even after knocking for a long time, no one answered him. Wang Fugui muttered, "Could they bear a grudge against me?" The next morning, Ren Xiaosu opened the clinic on time and got ready for business. But as soon as he opened the door, he saw Wang Fugui standing outside with a smile on his face. Ren Xiaosu snapped, "What's the matter? You see, I recommended you to them back then with good intentions." Wang Fugui said, "It's a chance for you get into the stronghold. Do you know how many people out here want to get into the stronghold? Everyone wants that. Why don't you seize this good opportunity for yourself?" Ren Xiaosu said unhappily, "I'll draw a map for you to lead them there. If you manage to bring them there, you'll gain entry to the stronghold." "I can't go." Wang Fugui flinched. "I'm not as skilled as you. Besides, what will my son do if I end up getting into the stronghold? Since I'm so old, I can find a wife out here as long as I'm willing to spend some money. But there won't be anyone who will be interested in me if I get into the stronghold." Ren Xiaosu said, "You may have a son, but I also have Liuyuan and big sister Xiaoyu. What will happen to them if I get into the stronghold? If you recommend me to them again, I'll make Liuyuan and big sister Xiaoyu go to your place and leech off of you. I'm only doing this for your good." Wang Fugui was exasperated and said, "If I were 20 years younger, I would have gone. For my own good." Ren Xiaosu sneered. "I thank your whole family." Wang Fugui also got angry. "I thank your 8 generations of ancestors." Gratitude received from Wang Fugui, +1. Ren Xiaosu was confused. He raged at the palace in his mind, how can this also be fucking considered as a gratitude? You're even assessing it to be sincere? You must be fucking doing this on purpose. Ren Xiaosu could never have expected to gain his 9th gratitude token in this fashion. It was too easy. However, even though Ren Xiaosu knew that Wang Fuegui was thinking of getting friendly with the celebrity from the stronghold, he had indeed recommended him to them out of good intentions. But the problem was that Ren Xiaosu did not really wish to get into the stronghold. But if Yan Liuyuan were allowed to go in instead, he would probably have already agreed to take on the task. Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment before saying earnestly, "Old Wang, I'm serious. I can't abandon Liuyuan and big sister Xiao to get into the stronghold myself. Stop suggesting that I be their guide." Wang Fuegui was also starting to get fed up. Okay, I understand. You can rest assured that as long as Boss Luo does not give his permission, they won't be able to take you away. This journey will take over 3 months to complete. If you're gone, who's going to supply the medicine to Boss Luo, right? Okay, as long as you understand what I'm saying, Ren Xiaosu said. At this moment, a man came up to Ren Xiaosu from the road and said, "Doctor, I want a consultation." "Enough talking, I've got a patient to attend to." Ren Xiaosu turned around and went back into the clinic. Ren Xiaosu sat behind the table and said to the man, "Where's your injury? Let me have a look." "I'm not injured, my balls ache," the man said. After he said that, the nurse, Xiao, who was standing nearby blushed in embarrassment. Ren Xiaosu felt a little awkward as well, so he tried to be professional and asked, "Do you experience the pain after intercourse?" The man was taken aback. "It hurts all the same whether I finish doing it or not." Ren Xiaosu was at a loss. What the hell is going on with the newest patients who come for a consultation? After he advised the man and sent him away, he reaped yet another gratitude token. Alright, no matter what illnesses they might have, it was fine as long as they could earn him some gratitude tokens. Now that Ren Xiaosu had earned 10 gratitude tokens, it seemed like he wasn't that far from unlocking his weapon. One of the reasons why Ren Xiaosu did not want to be the group's guide at this moment was that he felt that it would be more convenient to earn gratitude tokens while in town. If he were to go with the band and private army, would they show their gratitude for him? For some reason, Ren Xiaosu was consistently looking forward to getting the weapon and wanted to find out just what on earth it looked like. Since sincere gratitudes were so hard to come by, the weapon would not be terrible, right? The Jing Mountains spanned a vast area. Up until now, no one had really explored the hinterlands of the mountain range. So what kind of information did the stronghold's overseers receive? In the morning, Yan Liuyuan went to school happily with his new school bag that was recently sewn up by Xiao. When he arrived at school, he realized that something was off. Why were all of his classmates staring at him as soon as he entered the room? Yan Liuyuan ignored them as he took his seat. However, all of the students crowded around him. A strapping girl, Li Yuqian, who was the daughter of old Li from the grocery store, said to Yan Liuyuan, "Liuyuan, can you go back and tell your brother to stop making the class stay late?" "That's right." Wang Fuegui's idiot son also complained, "By making the class stay late every day, none of us have time to play anymore." Yan Liuyuan was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He said helplessly, "If what I say is useful, he would have already stopped making the class stay late." Everyone was unhappy to hear him say that. Li Yuqian sneered, "It's not like Mr. Zhang is paying your brother. I heard that your family doesn't lack money these days, so why is he so serious with the teaching? What, does he intend to take over at the school already? He's just a substitute teacher, but that doesn't mean he can tell us what to do." Li Yuqian let out a cry of pain. Yan Liuyuan got up and kicked Li Yuqian in the hip. No one had expected Yan Liuyuan to get angry. They heard Yan Liuyuan sneer, "What my brother taught you is knowledge that can help save your life out there in the wilderness. If you don't appreciate it, that's fine. But why are you making things up about him behind his back? If anyone mentions this again, don't blame me for being harsh on you." Yan Liuyuan turned 14 years old this year, but Li Yuqian was already 16 years old. Although they were about the same height, Li Yuqian was much stronger than Yan Liuyuan. Back when Wang Fugui tried to introduce Li Yuqian to Ren Xiaosu, Yan Liuyuan had mentioned that she was a strapping girl. He was not lying at that time. But when the other students saw Yan Liuyuan in this moment, it was as though they were watching a miniature version of Ren Xiaosu. The ferocity that exploded from both of them was exactly the same. Even though Yan Liuyuan often spoke harshly to people, his appearance was much milder and gentler than Ren Xiaosu's. But why did the mention of Ren Xiaosu make him react so strongly? Only now did they realize that there was a wild side to Yan Liuyuan. Li Yuqian had wanted to get up to return the blow. But when she saw Yan Liuyuan's expression, she reluctantly dropped the idea. I didn't make anything up about him. I was just telling the truth. Yan Liuyuan felt trapped. He was obviously the last person who wanted Ren Xiaosu to make the class stay late. The school teacher, Mr. Zhang, came in from outside with his hands behind his back. Why are all of you crowding around each other? Get back to your seats and prepare for class. All the students hurried back to their seats. Although Mr. Zhang looked quite kind and amiable after school, he was sterner than anyone else during lessons. Wang Fugui's idiot son, Wang Dalong, sat down beside Yan Liuyuan. He was Yan Liuyuan's desk mate. Wang Dalong stole a glance at Yan Liuyuan. When he saw Yan Liuyuan still sulking, he tried to change the subject to resolve the awkwardness. I had a dream yesterday that my father found me a stepmother. She mistreated me badly. Yan Liuyuan glanced at him. It's all right. Dreams are always the opposite of reality. Wang Dalong beamed with joy at the words. True that. Yan Liuyuan thought for a moment before saying, I think he might have found you a stepfather instead. Wang Dalong was confused. That evening, Ren Xiaosu and the others were having dinner. After dinner, he was planning to catch up on the lessons that Yan Liuyuan and his classmates had gone through at the school today. But at this moment, he saw an angry Wang Fugui leading a crying Wang Dalong into the clinic. Ren Xiaosu, come out. Ren Xiaosu was stunned, holding a bowl of rice in his hand. What's going on? Ask Liuyuan what he said to my son. The moment he got home, he started crying non-stop. Wang Fugui got even angrier when he recounted what his son had told him while crying. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yan Liuyuan. Yan Liuyuan, who was sitting obediently in his chair, said. I told him that old Wang might have found him a stepfather. Ren Xiaosu was confused. With a loud wail, Wang Dalong cried even harder. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yan Liuyuan. You're in the wrong this time, Liuyuan. How can you say something like that to someone? He turned around and comforted Wang Dalong. Don't worry, your father will find you a stepmother. It's impossible that he'll find a stepfather for you. Wang Dalong was stunned. He didn't want a stepmother either. He continued crying. This made Wang Fugui so angry that he cursed, I really have you to thank for explaining it for me. Gratitude received from Wang Fugui, +1. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. Although he felt that it was a strange way to gain a gratitude token, it was still a gratitude token. For some reason, Ren Xiaosu felt that a magical door was slowly opening for him. His gratitude tokens had accumulated to 11 just like that. Wang Fugui suddenly seemed to remember something that caused his anger to subside. He cautioned Ren Xiaosu, our town's administrator, Chen Heidong, unintentionally let slip something yesterday. He said that something strange has been happening at the other strongholds and that the same thing also seems to be happening at Stronghold 113. What is it? Ren Xiaosu asked in a serious tone. He didn't seem to know the details. Wang Fugui said, I'll let you know if I have any news. Anyways, be extra careful. It's usually not good when there are strange occurrences happening these days. After Wang Fugui left, Yan Liuyuan asked, why did old Wang say that it's usually not good when there are strange occurrences happening these days? Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought and said, maybe it's because our definition of what is good is too limited. We only call things that are advantageous to us good. Are we wrong to think that? Yan Liuyuan asked. To be honest, even though he went to school much more than Ren Xiaosu, he was not as hard-working as him. Ren Xiaosu would always read the books that he borrowed from Mr. Zhang while Yan Liuyuan lazed around. Sometimes, Yan Liuyuan thought, since Ren Xiaosu is already so capable, why would I need to work so hard? Ren Xiaosu looked at Yan Liuyuan and said, remember this, it's not wrong to think of it that way. Whatever is beneficial to us is good. There's nothing wrong with being selfish. But I want you to have a line you won't cross and to not be a doormat others walk over. I won't fall asleep next time. Yan Liuyuan looked at Xiaoyu and laughed in embarrassment. All of a sudden, someone knocked on the front door of the clinic. Frowning, Ren Xiaosu turned around. There normally wouldn't be someone coming to look for him when night fell because it was not safe in town. What was going on today? Could it be that Wang Fugui had turned around and come back to the clinic? In Ren Xiaosu's opinion, Wang Fugui was likely the only one who would come to their place at such a time. After all, the two households were right next to each other. Even if someone intended to use this opportunity to carry out a crime against Wang Fugui, he would have already reached the clinic before it could be carried out. Ren Xiaosu said as he opened the door, Old Wang, you really need to find a wife. Why do you knock on our door every day? But when the door opened, Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. It was not Wang Fugui. Ren Xiaosu recognized this person. It was a young man who often idled around town named Zhang Baozhen. He did not work and lived off his parents who worked at the factory. Ren Xiaosu asked, what is it? He examined him and saw that he had no injuries. Why did this person come here so late at night? If he wanted to rob the clinic, then this guy had traveled quite the distance for that. Ren Xiaosu now possessed a strength of 5.5 and a dexterity of 4.1 and had many years of experience in ruthless fighting against others. Not even 10 versions of a young man like Zhang Baozhen would be a match for Ren Xiaosu. Zhang Baozhen said rapidly, Doctor, please take a look at my illness. But you must keep it a secret for me. Ren Xiaosu thought about it and stepped aside to let him in. He purely felt a little curious. So tell me, what's your illness? Don't feel uncomfortable to share. I've seen much in life, so there isn't any illness that I haven't come across before. Please wait a moment. Zhang Baozhen was still quite polite to Ren Xiaosu. There were many young people in town who lived off their parents like Zhang Baozhen who came together to steal, extort, and fornicate. No one in town was willing to provoke them without reason. However, Zhang Baozhen was not foolish either. He knew better than to offend Ren Xiaosu. In fact, no one had dared to provoke Ren Xiaosu either. Although it seemed like Ren Xiaosu was similar to this batch of youngsters, the townspeople well knew that offending Zhang Baozhen and the others simply meant having to put up with a slight retaliation from them. It wasn't difficult to endure it, and it would be a trivial matter at most. But if they had messed with Ren Xiaosu, they could end up dying. Zhang Baozhen closed the clinic's door behind him before turning around to ask, Doctor, something strange is happening to me. Ren Xiaosu frowned and said, I can't treat you if you are impotent. It's not that. Zhang Baozhen said, let me demonstrate it to you. Don't get surprised. Ren Xiaosu waited to see what would happen. He saw Zhang Baozhen open his mouth and blow a saliva bubble. Ren Xiaosu rolled his eyes. Is that it? But the next instant, the bubble that floated out of Zhang Baozhen's mouth popped. Ren Xiaosu could feel a burst of power from it pushing him backwards. It wasn't very strong, but it was definitely not something that your ordinary saliva bubble could do. Doctor? Doctor, what are you doing? Zhang Baozhen looked at Ren Xiaosu uncertainly. I'm just checking to see if any of your saliva splashed onto me. After tidying up his clothes, Ren Xiaosu asked, when did you gain such a power? This is not an illness, so I can't treat it. But my parents said that I'm sick and that there's something wrong with my head, Zhang Baozhen explained. If I didn't come to see you, they wouldn't feel at ease. My parents are very fond of you. Ren Xiaosu felt that this sounded a little strange. But he thought for a while before saying, what you have doesn't seem like an illness to me. You might have heard of some people possessing strange powers these days. Ren Xiaosu was not lying. Once upon a time, someone in this world supposedly had a superpower that could pull a train out of thin air. The townspeople used to share this story with excitement, describing it in vivid detail. But when it happened to them, why did they end up labeling it as an illness? When Zhang Baozhen heard Ren Xiaosu tell him that he was not sick, he thanked him with joy. Thank you, doctor. I'll go back now and tell my parents about it. Gratitude received from Zhang Baozhen, +1. Then Zhang Baozhen turned around and left. Ren Xiaosu thought to himself that this kid was still quite a polite person. However, Ren Xiaosu did not like youngsters who were like Zhang Baozhen. After all, if you did not work hard in this era, you couldn't survive. The reason these young people had it so easy in life without doing anything was simply because their parents were still around. All parents worry about their children. But some parents were willing to give up everything they had in life to ensure their children could lead a good life. The next morning, Wang Fugui quietly walked into the clinic. He pulled Ren Xiaosu aside and whispered, I have news. Chen Heidong just found out about what happened. It seems like someone in another stronghold suddenly attacked their stronghold's overseer with a superpower. They're now investigating the existence of supernatural beings in all of the other strongholds. So such people really do exist. Is that so? Ren Xiaosu asked with a look of shock, then could there also be supernatural beings around us? Who knows? Wang Fugui said with a laugh. This doesn't really have anything to do with us. That's true. Ren Xiaosu laughed along with him. However, he was thinking about what happened the previous night. He wondered if Zhang Baozhen had told anyone else about it. It was a good thing to have someone as gossipy as Wang Fugui around. As this guy was close to the people from the stronghold, he was able to find out about any news faster than most people in town. It was no wonder that Wang Fugui could lead a better life than most of the townspeople. To his credit, this was probably the best expertise that he had. Suddenly, Wang Fugui gave a silly laugh and asked, Xiaosu, if I had a superpower, would it be easier for me to find a wife? You can forget about it. Ren Xiaosu teased, you're still thinking about that when your fool of a son is crying so hard over it. Bullshit, my son isn't a fool, Wang Fugui said unhappily. He can't poke his nose into my business. Besides, I was only bringing it up. Once I have a superpower too, wouldn't you already have one if you had any? What are you waiting for? Ren Xiaosu interrupted. Wang Fugui could not come up with a reply. Such matters were a common sight to Ren Xiaosu. Even men were like this, much less women. In the past, several women threw themselves at Ren Xiaosu just so they could survive in these harsh times. Some men did so as well, which made Yan Liuyuan want to gag when he learned about it. This was why Yan Liuyuan was so wary of Xiaoyu at the beginning. Sometimes, reality was stranger than the fiction found at Mr. Zhang's school. Wang Fugui shook his greasy, medium-length hair and said proudly, would I want those immoral women? With my status, I should at least be looking for a proper lady to marry, right? Yes, yes, you're the esquire of our town. Ren Xiaosu gave him a backhanded compliment. At this moment, two women walked past the clinic. Wang Fugui's eyes lit up. What do you think of those two? Ren Xiaosu examined them. One of them looks really good, but her figure is a little lacking. The other one isn't that pretty, but she has a good figure. So then, if may I ask, what do those two girls have anything to do with you? These words made Wang Fugui choke with anger. He was so furious that he turned around and got ready to head back to his grocery store to attend to his customers. However, a surprising turn of events happened. They saw the stronghold's portcullis being raised slowly. The sound of steel, wood, and rope rubbing against each other left people cringing. The dense, thick portcullis was being raised bit by bit. The weight of it left people short of breath. Chen Heidong came out of the stronghold with a group of soldiers. This time, the officer leading the private troops was not Wang Kongyang, whom Ren Xiaosu had dealt with before. It was a fresh face that had never been seen in town before. Where was Wang Kongyang? Did he get punished by Boss Luo? What are they going to do now? Ren Xiaosu wondered. I don't know. Wang Fugui had a blank look on his face. He brushed off Ren Xiaosu and headed towards Chen Heidong. Due to the distance, Ren Xiaosu could not hear what they were talking about. Then they saw the private troops of Stronghold 113 running towards town. After a while, they returned holding a man captive. That man screamed hysterically, "Why are you arresting me? Let go of me!" Ren Xiaosu watched silently. The man, who got arrested turned out to be Zhang Baozhen, the person who came to look for him last night. When Wang Fugui saw the private troops arresting people like that, he quickly stopped them. "My dear officers, what is going on here? Although this guy might be a little mischievous, he didn't commit any major crimes, right? Get lost!" The private army's officer sneered. Facing the dark and unfeeling firearms, Wang Fugui could only back off. Otherwise, they might just shoot at him. Wang Fugui spoke to the town administrator, Chen Heidong, again for a long time. In the end, Zhang Baozhen was still brought into the stronghold. The screeching sound rang out again as the dense and heavy portcullis separated the two worlds once again. Ren Xiaosu went up to Wang Fugui and asked, "What's the situation?" He had to clear it up because he knew that Zhang Baozhen must have been arrested and brought into the stronghold due to his superpower. Moreover, both he and Yan Liuyuan possessed such a power too. Wang Fugui sighed and said, "It's over, that kid is done for." "Why do you say that?" Chen Heidong said that guy showed off his superpower to a scoundrel friend of his yesterday. That scoundrel sold him out as soon as possible. All of the strongholds are weeding out these supernatural beings right now. If there were no incidents of a supernatural being attacking a stronghold overseer, it might have been easier to handle. But now, they've become the people the overseers dread the most. What would you do if you were afraid of someone? Kill them, Ren Xiaosu answered calmly and firmly. "See, that's where the overseers of the stronghold are different from you." Wang Fugui said with a frown. The first thing they thought of when they realized the danger of this was not to kill them but to understand them better. Chen Heidong mentioned that a yard and building in the stronghold have been vacated for a psychiatric hospital to be temporarily set up. They've also sent a lot of medical devices over to that place. Are they going to treat these supernatural beings? Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. Treatment? My ass! Wang Fugui said. Chen Heidong said that those devices are not meant for treating people. They were previously used for scientific research inside the stronghold. In just one day, the stronghold has arrested 3 supernatural beings. Those 3 people are more or less done for now. Ren Xiaosu felt a chill pass through himself. He could not imagine what it would feel like to be stuck in a psychiatric hospital and be studied by someone. "Old Wang, are you still keen on getting a superpower?" Ren Xiaosu asked. Wang Fugui thought for a while. "I don't mind having one, but I won't be so dumb as to let anyone know." "The same goes for you, Xiaosu. If you and Liuyuan have any superpowers, don't ever let anyone know." Ren Xiaosu put a strange expression on his face. Okay." That same night, a major incident happened in town. Zhang Baozhen's father found his way into that scoundrel's shack in the middle of the night, a place that was only a few square meters in size, and killed all 4 members of their family. In the end, he also died due to severe blood loss. Meanwhile, Zhang Baozhen's mother hanged herself on the dead, wilted tree at the intersection in the town. Zhang Baozhen was the only child in their family and was pampered all his life by his parents. He didn't even have to work as his parents would take care of him. Now that he was gone, his parents had no reason to live anymore. In town, some people sympathized with them while others secretly mocked, "What a show-off! So what if you have a superpower?" And that Zhang Baozhen's father, if he really had the courage, he would have charged straight into the stronghold instead. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu remembered the look on Zhang Baozhen's face when he was blowing the saliva bubble. What a fucking awful era! The high and mighty aristocrats in the stronghold seemed to have the power to control the life and death of people, but Ren Xiaosu felt that this would change someday. The only thing was, nobody knew when this day would come. A group of people gathered together in town, gazing at the dead, wilted tree where Zhang Baozhen's mother had hanged herself. Ren Xiaosu saw that Mr. Zhang from school was also around. Zhang Jinglin looked at some of the people next to him who had gathered around and said, "Did I teach y'all to be rubberneckers at school? Don't gloat over the misfortunes of others, lest theirs be yours." When he said that, several young and strong men beside Zhang Jinglin looked down in shame. Zhang Jinglin sighed and said, "Help bury the couple together in the same place." "Teacher, we have to go to work at the factory now," a few of the strong young men said hesitantly. Wang Fugui said, "You won't be working for nothing. I'll fork out 800 yuan for their burial." The strong young men answered, "We'll get to it immediately." Ren Xiaosu had something on his mind all day. Based on what Wang Fugui had told him, Zhang Baozhen was more or less done for the moment he got captured and sent to the psychiatric hospital. After the people from the stronghold finished conducting thorough research on him, he would surely have suffered terribly even if he did not die. Most importantly, Zhang Baozhen had lost his freedom from this day onwards. As for Ren Xiaosu himself, his secret was much bigger than Zhang Baozhen's. He had unlocked many features of his mind palace, but there were still many other features left waiting for Ren Xiaosu to explore. Even Ren Xiaosu himself did not know how deep the palace interior went and what level it would elevate him to eventually. If his secret were revealed, it wouldn't be surprising if he got taken away by the people from the stronghold and had his brains taken out and sliced apart. Ren Xiaosu had gone to school earlier and found Yan Liuyuan. He somberly instructed him to not reveal his secret to anyone and told him that this concerned their life and death. The two brothers did not have the ability to take on the stronghold yet. Inside and outside of the stronghold, thick and continuous trails of white smoke were spewing out through the factory chimneys into the sky. The clock in the stronghold was still ringing on time. It was as though nothing had happened. Today, Mr. Zhang seemed a little downtrodden. Sometimes, his mind would wander as he delivered his lessons. Whenever his students reminded him that he was losing his focus, he would bow and apologize to them. Finally, Mr. Zhang said, "Students, I'm sorry. I can't teach well today due to some personal issues. Class, study by yourselves. We won't be having any more lessons today." Ren Xiaosu did not go back straight to the clinic. He wanted to calm himself down at a quiet place like the school and think about the future of Yan Liuyuan, Xiaoyu, and him. When Ren Xiaosu took over the lessons in the afternoon, he did not teach anything new either. Frankly, his mind was not present at all today. By the time school ended, Ren Xiaosu surprisingly did not make the class stay late. He was only concerned with getting Yan Liuyuan home early. Ren Xiaosu said, "Class dismissed. I won't be teaching y'all about other things today. All rise," the class monitor said. "Thank you, teacher." Gratitude received from Li Yuqian, +1. Gratitude received from Wang Dalong, +1. Gratitude received from, Ren Xiaosu was stunned by this. There were only 24 fucking students in the entire class, but he managed to gain 23 gratitude token coins when he dismissed the class. Yan Liuyuan was the only one he didn't earn a gratitude token from. Yan Liuyuan had also noticed that Ren Xiaosu was a little absent-minded today, so he was more concerned about what was happening with his brother rather than thinking about going out to play after school. Ren Xiaosu stared blankly at the little bastards as they ran away and disappeared without a trace. So they didn't like his lessons after all? Y'all better fucking watch out. What is so bad with my teaching? It was a very fascinating day. Ren Xiaosu had worked very hard for nearly a fortnight just to earn 12 gratitude tokens. But in just one day today, he managed to gain 23 gratitude tokens. The total amount of his gratitude tokens had reached 35. It seemed that he was another step closer to unlocking the weapon. After Ren Xiaosu carefully weighed the pros and cons, he decided that if they did not like his lecture, then so be it. It was good enough as long as they let him earn those gratitude tokens. For the following day's lessons, Ren Xiaosu went straight to school instead of attending to patients at the clinic. He understood what he needed to do. What was his reason for opening the clinic? Was it to make money? That was definitely not the case. Now that he had found a method to quickly earn gratitude tokens, how could he miss out? The school teacher, Mr. Zhang Jinglin, was not even finished with his lesson when he saw Ren Xiaosu already standing outside the classroom. The students followed Zhang Jinglin's gaze to Ren Xiaosu. For some reason, when they saw him, a shiver ran down their spines. Today, Ren Xiaosu did not teach his usual wilderness survival lessons. Instead, he taught them about where to deal a fatal blow to another person during a fight or how to make an opponent instantly lose control of their motor functions. Ren Xiaosu himself had not actually received any related training in this field, and there were no places in town where he could learn something like this either. Therefore, everything he was teaching was accumulated from his years of experience in being involved in ruthless fights with others. Zhang Jinglin frowned when he heard Ren Xiaosu teaching them how to fight other people. He did not like to teach such things to the students and usually taught them about how to combat nature. There would be a psychological suggestion that humans were the enemies if you taught the students how to fight against other humans. Similarly, if you taught them how to take on wolves, they would regard wolves as their enemy as well. At heart, Zhang Jinglin never hoped for his students to become violent extremists. But for some reason, when he thought about Zhang Baogen's incident, he couldn't help but let out a sigh. In the end, he did not interfere with what Ren Xiaosu was teaching. Ren Xiaosu said to the students from the lectern, "Which are the most vulnerable parts of a human? If I have to list them, I'd list them in order of importance. Let's start with the one that most people know, the neck. In fact, this area is not particularly easy to aim for when you are fighting someone. That's because a person will subconsciously protect it the most. The entire neck and trachea are made up of bone and nearly 20 fragile rings of cartilage. By crushing any one of them with an attack, you can instantly cause your opponent to lose their will to fight. The fragmented bones will quickly block the delivery of oxygen, which will then lead to them suffocating to death." The classroom was silent. Ren Xiaosu looked over everyone. "Are there any questions?" Wang Dalong asked meekly, "How do you know that there are nearly 20 fragile rings of cartilage in the neck?" There were no relevant books in school, and no one in town specialized in this subject either. If Ren Xiaosu had not counted them himself before, how could he possibly know something like that? But how did Ren Xiaosu count them? Whose cartilage did he count? Thinking of this, everyone felt a little nervous. Ren Xiaosu did not answer this question. He looked out at the sky as the strongholds clock rang to signal that it was 4 p.m. Ren Xiaosu said cheerfully to everyone, "Class dismissed. All rise." "Thank you, teacher." Gratitude received from Wang Dalong, +1. Gratitude received from, Ren Xiaosu suddenly frowned when he realized that the number of gratitudes was incorrect. Shouldn't he be seeing an increase of more than 20 gratitude tokens? Why were there only 9 tokens? These little bastards had gotten used to him not making the class stay late this quickly? They didn't even give him any sincere gratitude now? I'm afraid that y'all haven't faced the harsh realities of society yet. Just as the students were about to rush out of class, they heard the sinister voice of Ren Xiaosu reverberate from behind them, "Everyone, get back here right now. Today, I'm gonna teach y'all how I came to learn how many rings of cartilage there are." Wang Dalong and Li Yuqian were speechless. So was the entire class. The students had gone home and complained about Ren Xiaosu's misdeeds to their parents, but their parents' reactions were all identical. "It's good that the teacher is teaching you more things. You should be grateful for it rather than complain, understand? You mustn't complain, especially not to your substitute teacher." The students could not understand this. In the past, the parents would side with them. But this time, they were all siding with Ren Xiaosu? Furthermore, why did their parents' tone sound a little strange? The students felt that there was something wrong with their parents' tone, so they kept at it and continued complaining. Li Yuqian's father, Li Fasai, said in a heartfelt manner to her, "Stop asking, dearie, and concentrate on your studies. You mustn't trouble your teacher, Ren Xiaosu, anymore, understand? Dad doesn't want you to leave this world before he does." The strapping girl, Li Yuqian, was shocked when she heard that. What did her father mean by "Dad doesn't want you to leave this world before he does"? Hence, the students now behaved exceptionally well in front of Ren Xiaosu. The moment he called them back, the students all rushed back to their seats like scared fledglings. Once he started teaching again, he lectured until it turned dark. As the sky darkened, the students stared blankly at Ren Xiaosu as he got more and more enthusiastic with his teaching. Finally, Li Yuqian could no longer stand it. She said meekly, "Teacher, it's getting dark. It won't be safe for us if we don't go home now." When the students previously said something similar, Ren Xiaosu would dismiss the class immediately. As such, when Li Yuqian finished saying that, all the students looked at Ren Xiaosu in anticipation. However, Ren Xiaosu said kindly, "Don't worry, all'll be fine." On this day, Ren Xiaosu lectured all the way until 8 p.m. before he finally dismissed the class. Night had fallen by this point. Ren Xiaosu did not receive any gratitude tokens at the end of the lesson, but he did not mind. The Stockholm Syndrome effect said that if there was no cruelty, how could there be gratitude? "Let's go, teacher will send all of you home," Ren Xiaosu said even more kindly. The students looked at one another. They suddenly felt that the substitute teacher, Ren Xiaosu, seemed to possess some kind of remarkable skill. In the past, Ren Xiaosu would definitely let the students return home before the sky darkened because it wouldn't be safe if they went back home any later than that. But this time, Ren Xiaosu didn't find it much of an issue to waste a bit of time, as long as the students could learn something useful. They had to understand how cruel society could be. Although it might be a little unsafe for ordinary people to lead a large group of children, it was not so for Ren Xiaosu. He was nearly twice as strong as the average adult in town, so the issue of safety was negligible. As long as someone didn't have a gun, Ren Xiaosu had nothing to be afraid of. Ren Xiaosu personally handed the students over to their parents one by one in order of the distance they lived from school. When some of the neighbors saw Ren Xiaosu sparing no effort to impart knowledge to the students and even sending them home personally for their safety, they felt that he was a great teacher. The parents did not know why Ren Xiaosu was doing this and simply considered him a kind and generous person. Thus, just this act of sending the students home had earned Ren Xiaosu 6 gratitudes from the parents. Ren Xiaosu felt that he had not fully taken the initiative before. After working so hard to heal people and save their lives, he had only received 12 gratitude tokens. But ever since changing his mindset and way of doing things, his gratitude tokens shot up to 50. And the only price to pay was that Yan Liuyuan refused to talk to him for the entire night. To be honest, the total duration of the daytime classes was only about 5 hours. Before Ren Xiaosu took over as the substitute teacher, the students could never have expected that the survival lesson would last for a full 5 hours. The next day, Ren Xiaosu could not wait to go to school. However, the school teacher, Mr. Zhang Jinglin, was the first to voice his opinion. He pulled Ren Xiaosu aside and said, "In the future, you mustn't dismiss the class so late. There should be a proper balance between work and rest when it comes to learning, and it has to be done gradually as well. Even if you want to impart unto them all your knowledge, you still have to do it slowly." Ren Xiaosu humbly accepted Zhang Jinglan's suggestion. "Teacher, you can rest assured that I will definitely not make the class stay late today." Yan Liuyuan was indifferent when he heard the conversation between the two of them. Of course he knew that Ren Xiaosu would not make the class stay behind today. His purpose for doing so yesterday was just so that he could harvest a wave of gratitudes from the students today. Yan Liuyuan knew Ren Xiaosu too well. As Yan Liuyuan predicted, the moment the strongholds clock rang to signal 4 p.m. in the afternoon, Ren Xiaosu smiled and said amiably, "Shall we end the class here, everyone?" Everyone in the classroom was silent. No one knew why Ren Xiaosu would ask such a question. If they answered yes, wouldn't it mean that Ren Xiaosu was bad at teaching? But if they answered no, they were afraid that Ren Xiaosu would grant their wish of not wanting to end the class. So they simply kept their mouths shut. Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "There should be a proper balance between work and rest when it comes to learning. I imparted so much knowledge to everyone yesterday, so I'll not make y'all stay late today. On one hand, this is so that everyone can process the knowledge you've learned. On the other hand, it's so that everyone can relax a little and have some fun today." The students were so touched that they nearly cried. "Class dismissed," Ren Xiaosu said. "All rise." "Thank you, teacher." Gratitude received from Li Yuqian, +1. Gratitude received from Wang Dalong. Gratitude received from, like the day before yesterday, Ren Xiaosu reaped another 23 gratitude tokens, with the exception of Yan Liuyuan's. In just 3 days, he was close to maxing out on the 100 gratitude tokens that he needed. Now with 73 tokens, he was super close to unlocking the weapon. Through the open classroom door, Ren Xiaosu saw Wang Fugui trotting towards the school. "Old Wang, what are you doing here?" Ren Xiaosu asked. He wondered if something had happened to Xiao at the clinic. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu was about to hurry home with Yan Liuyuan. However, Wang Fugui said, "Please get ready. The band will be coming out of the stronghold again. Someone just delivered a letter to me from Boss Luo, and I don't know how they did it, but he actually gave his permission for you to be their guide." Ren Xiaosu froze. His first reaction was one of relief when he knew that Xiao wasn't in trouble. But right after, he got worried because he realized that the band must have had a more obscure and important purpose in venturing into the mountains. How else could they have successfully persuaded Boss Luo into allowing him to go with them? Was it because they had given Boss Luo enough kickbacks? Or could it be that Boss Luo was involved in the band's plan to venture into the Jing Mountains? Either way, it seemed like Ren Xiaosu would have to make this trip. Ren Xiaosu turned around and walked to the school's backyard. Wang Fugui asked anxiously, "Where are you going?" "I'm gonna look for Mr. Zhang to discuss rooming Yan Liuyuan and big sister Xiao at the school, or at least living here until I get back," Ren Xiaosu said firmly. Only then would Ren Xiaosu not have any worries. However, it would be a huge mistake if this group of people thought that Ren Xiaosu could be easily pushed around once they reached the wilderness. Zhang Jinglan looked at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "Has it already been confirmed that you must go?" Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and said, "I'm afraid there's no way to reject them anymore. You saw the plight of Zhang Baozhen. Your life and mine are in the hands of those people from the stronghold. If I take the initiative to go and face the dangers now, I might be able to avoid dying. I could even sacrifice the others to save myself when I'm out there. But if I continue to stay here and reject them, I'm afraid that they'll start using underhand methods to deal with us. Is there no better option?" Zhang Jinglan asked. "I'm afraid not." Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, "But, Mr. Zhang, don't worry. Even if they get wiped out, I'll be fine. In fact, Ren Xiaosu did not want to get involved in this initially. With his current fitness and experience in field survival, he was not worried that he would not make it back alive. However, the reward that was offered to him was unsatisfactory. It would have been better if he, Yan Liuyuan, and Xiaohu could all get into the stronghold. Otherwise, it would all be meaningless to him. He was very eager to get into the stronghold, but he could not leave Yan Liuyuan and Xiaohu behind and go in by himself. What Ren Xiaosu didn't tell Yan Liuyuan was that after he had gained his power, he would, on certain nights, toss and turn in bed in his desire to see the bigger world. This town was so small that he could see the other end of it in a single glance from a high place. It was so small that he could hear the voice of a widow scolding some young punks in the west from the east of town. He had also thought of heading out to see the world. In fact, the only thing that Ren Xiaosu was worried about was who would ensure the safety of Xiaohu and Yan Liuyuan if he left. If Zhang Jinglan refused to allow Xiaohu and Yan Liuyuan to stay, Ren Xiaosu would not leave with the band no matter what. It looks like you know what you're doing. Tell Xiaohu and Liuyuan to move over this evening. I'll clean up the house for them in the meantime, Zhang Jinglan said with a nod. Zhang Jinglan felt that no one in town would be more experienced than Ren Xiaosu when it came to surviving in the wilderness. As such, seeing how confident Ren Xiaosu was from his point of view as a teacher, he did not say anything more. Ren Xiaosu was relieved when Zhang Jinglan agreed to his request. Teacher, I've recently managed to save up 5,000 yuan, so please accept it as a boarding fee for big sister Xiaohu and Yan Liuyuan. Take it back. Zhang Jinglan shook his head and said, I'm a school teacher, so I only accept payment for tuition. Please don't reject it, teacher. You can use the money to buy some cigarettes to smoke, Ren Xiaosu said. Zhang Jinglan hesitated for a moment before coughing. I'll accept 1,000 yuan as the rent. Ren Xiaosu did not haggle with him any further. He counted out 1,000 yuan and handed it to Zhang Jinglan. He was usually a stingy person, but he would never mull over something so important. Ren Xiaosu would never hesitate to spend money on Yan Liuyuan. For the remaining 4,000 yuan, Ren Xiaosu's intention was to hand it over to Xiaohu. This money must not be handed over to Yan Liuyuan in case Xiaohu got any ideas for the money. At most, she could take all of the money and leave, but Yan Liuyuan would not come to any harm as a result. If the money was given to Yan Liuyuan instead, his safety would be threatened. Even now, Ren Xiaosu still had some doubts about Xiaohu. He might be wrong in thinking this way and Xiaohu would feel let down if she knew about it, but this was probably the best choice to minimize any pain or regrets. Honestly, Ren Xiaosu still felt that their time spent with Xiaohu was too short. It was not that he doubted Xiaohu to have any motives. It was just that he had been struggling for so long in this wasteland, fighting for each day of survival with his own hands and leaving a trail of blood every step of the way. Having led such a life, how could he so easily leave their fate to someone they had known for such a short time? Ren Xiaosu returned to the clinic with Yan Liuyuan to pack their belongings. He did not expect that their recently acquired new home would be vacated again. Wang Fugui said, "Don't worry, I'll look after the yard for you and will absolutely not let anyone else move in." "Okay, much appreciated," Ren Xiaosu said. "Actually, you don't have to insist on letting them move into the school. With me around, what's there to be afraid of?" Wang Fugui laughed. "Aren't I also guarding against you?" Ren Xiaosu mercilessly rejected Wang Fugui's suggestion. In this town, the school was the safest. Wang Fugui was not angry. He knew what kind of person Ren Xiaosu was, so he expected Ren Xiaosu to guard against him as well. Xiaohu and Yan Liuyuan did not talk at all throughout this, merely looking down and packing their stuff. Only when they finally packed everything did Yan Liuyuan ask in a whisper, "Do you have to go?" "I'll come back. It won't be dangerous as long as we take the correct route. If it really gets dangerous, I'll leave them behind and run back here myself," Ren Xiaosu said. Instead of answering Yan Liuyuan's question, he just stuffed the money into Xiao's hands. Anyways, I won't be able to spend any money when I'm out in the wilderness, so keep this money safe with you. Okay, Xiao agreed. You should bring more dried food with you. It's too much hard work to depend on luck when you're looking for food in the wilderness. There's no need for that. Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, not taking into consideration the taste and my tolerance for it, it'll still be very easy to find food once we get dozens of kilometers away from the stronghold. But Xiao's words reminded Ren Xiaosu of something. Since he could place the medicine vial into his mind palace at any time he wanted, could he do the same with other items? Since the medicine vial was a real object with mass, it meant the palace was in a peculiar dimension. If that were the case, Ren Xiaosu would also like to secretly bring along the town's well with him on this trip. After all, the water outside town was not exactly safe for consumption. This was probably what being uprooted one meant. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu took a cornbread bun one next him and secretly tried to store it away into the palace. Then something strange happened. The cornbread was still in his hands. The voice from the palace intoned, "Storage rights have not been obtained." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. So he really could store things into the palace, but he wasn't qualified to do so yet. He asked in his mind, how do I obtain the rights to access the storage? Unauthorized to answer. The palace went silent and did not answer Ren Xiaosu's question. Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that the palace did not seem to have its own consciousness. It was just assigning specific quests to Ren Xiaosu based on a certain logic. Its role seemed only to provide guidance to Ren Xiaosu on how to act. After Ren Xiaosu lodged both Xiao and Yan Liuyuan at the school, he turned around and left without hesitation. Xiao and Yan Liuyuan stood at the school's entrance and looked at Ren Xiaosu's receding figure as he walked off into the darkness. Yan Liuyuan suddenly asked, "Big sister Xiao, you know why he handed all the money to you, right?" Xiao acknowledged quietly. "Will you blame him?" Yan Liuyuan looked at Xiao. "No, sister." Xiao started smiling. Ren Xiaosu walked far away before finally looking back in the direction of the school. He could also see the vast galaxy spreading out across the sky overhead, a sea of stars. He turned around and marched with conviction to the clinic to welcome the arriving guests. A lot of the time, when people looked back on their lives, they might remember a minor decision that they made at a certain point in time. However, that decision could very well turn out to be the crossroads where they experienced a great change in their life. Going left or right took a momentary thought, and once they made that decision, they would have to leap into the unknown without hesitation. But at that moment in time, they would only think of it as a normal day in their lives. Knock, knock, knock. 3 raps sounded on the door. "Please come in, the door's open," Ren Xiaosu said. He did not even raise his head, looking like he was busy filling out a medical record. When the door opened, the morning sun shone onto Ren Xiaosu's face. He looked up and was surprised to see a well-dressed woman standing at the door. Ren Xiaosu had never seen someone wear this kind of outfit in town before. Ren Xiaosu had seen her before when he was leaning on the windowsill. This woman was the famous singer from the stronghold, Luo Xinyu. "How fanciful," Ren Xiaosu mumbled to himself. Then he looked behind Luo Xinyu at where the band members and private troops were standing. This time, the private army had actually sent out 12 soldiers, even more than the previous expedition. But Ren Xiaosu's attention was still on the girl with the cap, the owner of the perfect firearms proficiency. The girl was dressed in dark blue sportswear and still wearing her cap very low. She seemed to have noticed that Ren Xiaosu was staring at her, so she raised her face slightly. Ren Xiaosu saw her delicate chin but still could not see her eyes that were shrouded by the shadow of the cap. Behind this group of people, a large group of students had gathered. In fact, the band members were also a little confused. Why had these children suddenly gathered here? Li Fasai's strapping daughter whispered from behind to the girl with the cap, "Are y'all taking Ren Xiaosu away?" No one answered Li Yuqian. It seemed that the girl with the cap didn't like to say much. But suddenly, Ren Xiaosu heard the voice from the palace in his mind say, "Quest, reject going with them to the Jing Mountains." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Why was the palace also involving itself in this matter? Typically, the palace would do things for his good, but why was it not allowing him to go to the Jing Mountains? What could possibly be there? Obviously, Ren Xiaosu had been to the Jing Mountains before. Although that place was definitely a little more dangerous than staying in town, it shouldn't be so dangerous that the palace had to remind him not to go. Unless something had changed? Thinking of this, the thought of backing out started to grow in Ren Xiaosu's mind. He wanted was to see the vast world, not how dangerous it was. Luo Xinyu sat down across from Ren Xiaosu. She smiled and said, "You're Ren Xiaosu, aren't you?" Ren Xiaosu looked at Luo Xinyu and started to wonder aloud, "My father's father is called Grandpa, my father's mother is called Grandma." Luo Xinyu was confused. "Are you seriously mental?" Then an officer from the private army walked in. He looked at Ren Xiaosu and laughed. "Stop pretending, we've met before." When Ren Xiaosu looked up and saw the person approaching, he didn't feel so good anymore. Wasn't this Wang Kongyang? The man who had searched him twice already. He couldn't keep pretending. Not only that, but Ren Xiaosu also knew he had to go on this expedition no matter what now. He slumped out of his upright posture, leaning against the back of the chair. His entire body suddenly turned indolent. "I'm not going." Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. You may use it to learn another person's skills. Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. The quest was complete. Indeed, the criteria for whether a quest was complete as judged by the palace was not based on the established facts but the attitude displayed by Ren Xiaosu. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu got a bold idea. Wang Kongyang, who was standing by the side, said, "How can you not go? I'll go," Ren Xiaosu said in a serious tone. Wang Kongyang was confused. However, to Ren Xiaosu's great disappointment, the palace did not give him another new quest. Come to think of it, he could only complete the quest to gift the sparrow to someone once. How could Ren Xiaosu possibly be allowed to keep spamming quests like this? At this moment, Luo Xinyu laughed. "If you're willing to go, that would be for the best. I trust that the letter from Boss Luo has already been delivered to you. If you don't go, you won't have any standing in this town." "I can go," Ren Xiaosu said, "but I have a few conditions." Luo Xinyu looked at Ren Xiaosu with a smile. She felt that their conversation was finally getting somewhere. "Speak." "I want 30,000 yuan as remuneration." "No, you'll only get 10,000 yuan." "All right then, I'll want an additional 10 bags of salt, 10 cartons of cigarettes, 100 kilograms of rice, and..." Ren Xiaosu started counting on his fingers. Luo Xinyu said calmly, "Let me stop you right there. I'll pay you the 30,000 yuan." "All right, but I still have another condition," Ren Xiaosu said. "Can't you say everything in one go?" Luo Xinyu said impatiently. "You were the one who cut me off just now." Ren Xiaosu said, "I can go, but Wang Kongyang can't." Wang Kongyang was obviously a relative of the dead factory manager, Wang Dongyang. He had already abused his authority by searching him twice. If they set off on the expedition together, there might just be some trouble along the way. As such, Ren Xiaosu was reluctant to have a time bomb like him going with him. Wait a moment. Could it be possible that Wang Kongyang was expelled because he searched Ren Xiaosu twice and offended Boss Luo in the process? This was a very strong possibility. Which ordinary soldier would be willing to go out into the wilderness? Did they get sick of enjoying their life in the stronghold? Hence, if Wang Kongyang were expelled, his unhappiness towards Ren Xiaosu would be even greater. In that case, all the more he should not go on the expedition together with him. It was said that the most worrying thing in this wasteland were the beasts that had grown increasingly strong, but Ren Xiaosu disagreed, as he had encountered and killed some of those before. To him, most worrying in this wasteland were not the beasts but the humans. Luo Xinyu turned to look at Wang Kongyang. She didn't expect that these two would have a grudge with each other. Luo Xinyu turned around and glanced at the girl with the cap who gave a veiled nod at her. Luo Xinyu said, "All right, Wang Kongyang, you can return to the stronghold." Wang Kongyang looked at Ren Xiaosu. With a chuckle, Ren Xiaosu said to him, "You don't really want to go either, right?" The corners of Wang Kongyang's mouth curled up. "You're interesting." Wang Kongyang then turned around and left. After he was gone, Ren Xiaosu said, "Actually, I still have another condition." But Luo Xinyu had already stood up, and her smile had turned into a stern look. "Lad, my patience has run out." Ren Xiaosu wondered why the people from this stronghold had such frequent mood swings. She was smiling at him a moment ago, so why did her attitude change all of a sudden? A spontaneous decision like replacing an officer, even if it was just a low-ranking one, was enough to show what kind of influence Luo Xinyu had in the stronghold. It was just that Ren Xiaosu had also noticed the girl with the cap surreptitiously nodding at Luo Xinyu. Just who was this cap-wearing girl? Ren Xiaosu suddenly said, "We're going to be a team, but I still don't know what your names are." A band member sneered, "We're no teammates with a refugee. You're only a guide, so don't act like you're close with us." Ren Xiaosu scrutinized this band member as he was seriously considering whether there would be a suitable place to kill him along the way. There was a clear contrast between the refugees in town and the residents of the stronghold. Compared to the fair and refined people in the stronghold, the dirtiness and barbaric behavior of the townspeople were quite evident. But there was an even more essential difference between the two: their attitude towards life. How did Ren Xiaosu survive all this while? And how did these people live their life in comfort in the stronghold? The environment would greatly influence the development of a person, their thinking, their character, etc. At this moment, an officer came out of the stronghold and headed straight to the clinic. When he appeared in front of everyone, he spoke, "I'm 2nd Lieutenant Su Xianchu of the Field Service Division." It was not until this moment that everyone started introducing themselves. However, Ren Xiaosu did not bother remembering any of their names as he continued staring at the band member who'd mocked him. He heard the band member introducing himself as, "I'm Ms. Luo Xinyu's agent. My name is Lu Buletin." Ren Xiaosu took note of Lu Buletin's name and jotted it into his memory. Suddenly, the cap-wearing girl said, "I'm Yang Xiaojin 1. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. So this girl was named Yang Xiaojin. For some reason, Ren Xiaosu felt that this name sounded very pleasant. Importantly, the town's refugees and the people from the stronghold also had another difference: their names. Look at the names of the people from the stronghold. Su Xianchu, Lu Buletin, Luo Xinyu, Wang Kongyang, Yang Xiaojin, etc. And then look at the names of the refugees in town. Wang Fugui, Wang Dalong, Li Fasai, Li Yuqian, etc. The names of the townspeople sounded way too crude one. But with this, Ren Xiaosu got an understanding of what the duties of those in the team were. As Luo Xinyu's agent, Lu Buletin was the person who was in charge of the band's overall affairs. Things like the distribution of daily necessities and other administrative matters were all in his care. 5 off-road vehicles and a pickup truck were dispatched this time, and the trunks were filled with all of their daily essentials. Meanwhile, Su Xianchu was responsible for the management of the convoy and ensuring the safety of the group. Ren Xiaosu had thought that Yang Xiaojin would have some responsibilities as well. However, after listening to all of the introductions, he realized that she was apparently detached from the team, with no responsibilities to oversee. According to Luo Xinyu's introduction to Su Xianchu, Yang Xiaojin was a friend of hers, and she was only following them to Stronghold 112 for an excursion. At that moment, Ren Xiaosu was tempted to say, "Like hell I'd believe that." After the introductions finished up, Everyone boarded their assigned vehicles. There were a total of 20 people going on this expedition, including Ren Xiaosu. But when Ren Xiaosu was about to get into the vehicle, Lu Buletin suddenly said, "Don't sit in the vehicle since you're so dirty. Go sit in the bed of the pickup." Ren Xiaosu did not argue with him. After all, was it necessary to take it up with someone who was essentially dead? Ren Xiaosu sat in the cargo bed of the pickup and listened to the loud droning of the vehicle's engine as the town slowly disappeared from his view. At the moment of departure, Ren Xiaosu still had some unwillingness in his heart. No matter how dirty and crappy this town was, he still called the place home all these years. Just as Ren Xiaosu was getting a little emotional, he heard cheering erupt. Ren Xiaosu is leaving at last. We're free now. Ha ha ha, our days of suffering are finally over. Ren Xiaosu turned around speechlessly and looked. He was surprised to see Li Yuqian and Wang Dalong leading a group of students from the school in celebration as they high-fived each other. The other townspeople did not feel much. While Ren Xiaosu was the only doctor in town, it wouldn't really make a difference in their lives even after he left. But it was different for the students. They knew that their lives would definitely get better after today. In this moment, they forgot the fear of being dominated by Ren Xiaosu. A middle-aged man dashed out of the crowd. It was Li Yuqian's father, Li Fasai. Li Fasai dragged his strapping daughter back home. "Do you not want to live anymore?" Li Yuqian wondered, "What are you afraid of, Dad? Ren Xiaosu is already gone." Li Fasai griped, "But he'll be back. What if he doesn't make it back?" Li Yuqian argued, "Don't they all say it's very dangerous in the wilderness? What do you know?" Li Fasai's grip tightened even further as he squeezed her hand. "Even if all of the others perish, he would still make it back alive. And don't you be wishing death unto other people in the future, ya hear?" By saying that Ren Xiaosu might not make it back, Li Yuqian was implying that he would die in the wilderness. In reality, the townspeople were numb to such life and death events. It was quite normal for them to experience death in their daily lives. But if such a menacing seed of thought were planted in a child, no one would know what sort of fruit it would bear in the future. Luo Xinyu and the others who were in the off-road vehicles also heard the cheering. They rolled down their windows and looked back to see what was going on. Although they did not know what hatred those people had for Ren Xiaosu, they knew that they were celebrating his departure from town. Lu Buletin was sitting in the front passenger seat and muttered, "How unpopular does he have to be for them to celebrate his departure?" In the back seats, Luo Xinyu laughed and said, "When we get back, we should make a proper inquiry into this guy. I want to know exactly what he's done in this town." "Why would you want to find out more about him, Xinyu?" Lu Buletin scorned. "He's just a punk kid from the hamlet. If we weren't looking for a guide, would he have any chance of interacting with people like us? This is a blessing that he earned through his previous life, but he doesn't cherish it." Only Yang Xiaojin remained silent as she sat in the vehicle. She seemed to be thinking about something. At the school gate, Xiao was holding onto the bars of the fence as she looked at the end of the road leading out of town. She watched Ren Xiaosu and those vehicles turn into tiny black dots in the distance. She turned around and went into the backyard of the school to wet a towel with some water. Then she walked into the school and wiped Yan Liuyuan's forehead with it. He had become unconscious after coming down with a sudden fever. Mr. Zhang went to Old Wang's grocery store to buy some anti-fever medication while Xiaohu stayed by Yan Liuyuan's side to take care of him. At this moment, Yan Liuyuan was groaning, and it seemed like he was having a bad dream. Xiaohu gently put her hand on Yan Liuyuan's forehead and whispered, "Don't worry, Liuyuan, he'll definitely make it back." While sitting in the pickup truck bed, Ren Xiaosu occasionally saw some concrete surfaces on the road. But for whatever reason, those roads had crumbled a long time ago and were in a state of decay. Ren Xiaosu had once heard from the schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang, that the concrete roads were left behind from the time before the cataclysm. The structure of the roads had degraded after so many years, and most of them were now covered by layers of dirt. This was the case with most of the major roads linking the strongholds together. However, these dirt roads had a slightly more even surface due to more vehicles traveling on them. In reality, not many vehicles traveled between the strongholds. Back at their own town, Ren Xiaosu and the others would only see non-local vehicles coming to Stronghold 113 about a dozen times a year. Even that was considered quite a lot. The wilderness was not all desolate. On the contrary, it took only dozens of kilometers after leaving town before they were greeted with lush greenery everywhere. Over the years, the vegetation got even lusher. However, Ren Xiaosu didn't feel that this was a bad thing. Back in town, food was usually considered a scarcity. Since he could not have meat, he would eat more vegetables. He had also noticed that the cabbages planted by Zhang Jinglin were getting larger than before. Ren Xiaosu even specifically asked Zhang Jinglin whether he had used any fertilizers to grow them, but he denied it. This was a good thing. Perhaps one day a single potato might even be enough to feed a family of 3. When Lu Buletin made Ren Xiaosu sit in the bed of the pickup, he never could have expected that Ren Xiaosu would do something. The cargo bed was filled with food and water provisions they brought with them from the stronghold. There was no need to lock such items up, so they were simply covered with tarps. While Ren Xiaosu sat in the cargo bed, he lifted the tarp out of curiosity. He had a look under it and immediately saw the word cracker. Then he lifted another tarp and saw bottled water. Because of the bumpy road, the vehicles did not go fast. In reality, the band did not fear wild animal encounters. After all, they had 12 soldiers from the private army who were carrying loaded weapons with them. As such, they did not have to worry too much about any beasts. Although a wolf attack had taken place earlier, the wolves were long gone and hiding in the mountains several hundred kilometers away from here. There was absolutely no need to worry that they would suddenly return. According to past experience at the stronghold, it would take at least a year of recuperation for them to come back and be active in the area again. So what worried the convoy the most at the moment was what would happen if the vehicles broke down. Half of these soldiers from the private army were trained in automobile repair, but they couldn't possibly bring a full set of spare parts for the expedition with them. While this made the journey slower, it was better than having to walk there. In between, Ren Xiaosu insisted on getting out to relieve himself. As a result, the entire convoy had to stop and wait for him. This made them even more displeased with him, but Ren Xiaosu was not bothered by it. He faced everyone's complaints as if it were nothing. The convoy continued moving until noon. When they came to a stop, Lu Buletin jumped out of the vehicle first. He laughed happily and said, "I've stayed in the stronghold for too long. It's such a great feeling to come out here and see the sweeping vistas." A soldier laughed and said, "Yeah, that's right. I've gotten terribly bored from staying inside the stronghold all the time." In fact, everyone had such thoughts from the moment they set off on this expedition. They were all in the mood to enjoy the scenery, chat, and laugh. However, this would likely not be the case in a few days. In the past, Ren Xiaosu also thought that it was rather lovely when he first came out to the wilderness to hunt. Lu Buletin beckoned for everyone to get out of their vehicles. He said, "Let's get out here and eat something. After we finish, we'll continue on our journey and try to get to the Yun range before it gets dark. We were there the previous time, and there's a clearing that's suitable for setting up camp." 1.https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/yun_range. Everyone was chatting and laughing as they got out of the off-road vehicles. Several of the soldiers gathered to smoke together. Their faces were full of happiness when they started puffing away. Lu Buletin called for the band to go over to the pickup truck. He did not have the authority to order the soldiers around. It was neither down to his nor Luo Xinyu's influence that they were able to hire 12 soldiers from the private army to come with them on this trip. In actual fact, their band was here to act as a cover for the private troops to carry out their mission. In such circumstances, others might think that Lu Buletin and Luo Xinyu were very influential. But they knew better. As Lu Buletin walked towards the pickup truck, he said to a band member next to him, "We'll distribute the cigarettes that we brought along to the soldiers in a bit." "All right, how many should we give out to them?" the band member asked. "Bring out 1 carton first. Didn't we take 10 cartons along with us? There's no need to be so anxious. We can hand them out slowly." Lu Buletin smiled and said, "We have a fresh group of soldiers joining us, so everyone will start getting along once we get familiar with one another." When Lu Buletin came to the back of the pickup truck, he received a shock as he turned around and had a look inside. "Holy shit! Ren Xiaosu, what have you done?" Ren Xiaosu looked at Lu Buletin and said, "Why do you look so shocked?" "I didn't do anything at all." He burped. As he had a little too much to eat, he couldn't help burping. Ren Xiaosu stood up to stretch himself, then brushed off the cracker crumbs on his body. Lu Buletin leaned over into the cargo bed and looked around. His heart ached. "Are you a pig? How can you eat so much? You ate 5 packets of crackers all by yourself in one morning." Quite frankly, it had been a long time since Ren Xiaosu had eaten so much. In their poorest days, he would leave his food for Yan Liuyuan to eat. They only became rich recently, so he hadn't had the chance to be extravagant yet. Besides, the crackers they brought along were delicious. There were both sweet and salty ones. Importantly, salt and sugar were luxury goods in town. Most of the time, they would just have plain boiled potatoes or some similar food to eat. Where would they get the chance to eat such delicious food like crackers? There was even a lot of potable water available in the vehicle. "Look how bloated your belly is!" Lu Buletin roared. "You must be 4 months pregnant, right? Don't you feel uncomfortable stuffing yourself with so much food?" Ren Xiaosu snapped, "It's only because you let me sit here in the bed that this happened. But now that you mention it, it does feel a little uncomfortable." Ren Xiaosu got out of the pickup and started running into the distance. "Y'all can eat first. I need to take a dump." While Ren Xiaosu ran far away, Lu Buletin and the others felt frustrated in the wilderness. A band member hesitated before saying, "Why don't we just let him sit inside the vehicle?" Lu Buletin stared at him. "Why should we let him sit in the vehicle? Is a refugee like him qualified to sit together with us? Hey!" The band member did not sound so confident at his suggestion anymore, but he still muttered, "If we continue to let him sit in the bed of the pickup for 2 more days, I'm afraid that our provisions will not last until Stronghold 112. At the words, Lu Buletin made a rough estimation of Ren Xiaosu's appetite. Then he sighed and said, "Indeed, we won't be able to last until then." In the end, everyone unanimously decided to let Ren Xiaosu sit in the vehicle. When Ren Xiaosu came back, he was unhappy to find out that he had to sit in the vehicle. "I don't want to sit in the vehicle. I'm not qualified to sit together with y'all. I'm just a refugee. Let me go, let me be with my crackers. Are you people human?" Eventually, things were solved after everyone worked together to cram him into the vehicle. In their opinion, shouldn't you, Ren Xiaosu, take the initiative and volunteer like the first guide had done? How many people were hoping to strike up a closer relationship with those from the stronghold? Wang Fugui was indeed right to say that whoever the important people from the stronghold picked to do their bidding would lead to said people having a prosperous life. Yet Ren Xiaosu's reaction was to simply avoid them. As a result, everyone's impression of Ren Xiaosu worsened after the cracker incident. Especially Lu Buletin. He was now even trying to persuade Luo Xinyu to head back to town to find another guide. "Xinyu, we've only set off for half a day." Lu Buletin said, "It's still not too late if we return to town. We'll only be wasting a day of travel time." "But that's still a waste of time," Luo Xinyu said as she looked out of the window. "But have you thought about it?" Lu Buletin continued, "This kid seems really unreliable. If he gets even more unreliable, we won't just be wasting a day's time. I've heard before that the refugees in town don't have much class, but I didn't expect it to be so bad. Luo Xinyu shook her head and said, Wang Fugui said that if even he can't lead us through the mountains, no one else can do it. I don't believe that. Lu Buletin said in scorn, the town is so big, so how can there not be someone who can lead us through the mountains? We only asked around the town, but there are actually a lot more people in the vicinity where there are 7 large factories. Quite a few of them live at the factories, so if we went there to ask around, we might just discover something new. There are only 6 factories now, Luo Xinyu corrected. One of the factories had just been destroyed by the wolves' attack. As such, there were only 6 left. Then we can go and check out the other factories, Lu Buletin said in embarrassment. Enough, there will be no more discussion on this matter. Luo Xinyu rejected him and said, it wasn't easy for us to get 12 soldiers from the private army to escort us this time, so don't complicate things any further. Lu Buletin did not keep arguing. Outsiders might think that Luo Xinyu was still young and most of the decisions would be made by him, the agent. But Lu Buletin knew best that Luo Xinyu was a highly independent girl, and he was just the executor of her decisions. Nowadays, there were celebrities like Luo Xinyu in every large stronghold. They were commonly known as protags. But these protagonists would generally only have supporters within their own strongholds, and it was very difficult for them to make it at the other strongholds. After all, the roads in the outside world were not as well developed as before the cataclysm happened. Furthermore, it was difficult to predict what people liked, so there were certainly some risks to bear if they wanted to expand their influence out of their own strongholds. Once, a celebrity in Stronghold 89 wanted to cross over to the other strongholds to expand his influence. As a result, he went missing after leaving his stronghold. His agent and accompanying bodyguards were also nowhere to be found. It wasn't until 2 months later that a body suspected to be his was found in the wilderness. There was a bullet embedded in his skeletal remains that clearly suggested he died from a gunshot wound. Further, he was even shot from behind. This made everyone else even warier. But Luo Xinyu was never satisfied with only being prominent in one stronghold. She was willing to take risks even though she knew it was dangerous to do so. For a girl, this required a lot of courage. Luo Xinyu looked at Lu Buletin, who kept silent. You can pick on him, but don't let it affect our journey. We just need him to properly guide us to our destination. Once we get back from Stronghold 112, you can do whatever you want with him. Okay, Lu Buletin responded. It was a bumpy ride in the vehicles, with the soldiers from the private army driving. They were already driving the vehicles as safely as possible to avoid any irreversible damage to the suspensions, chassis, tires, and other parts of the vehicles. However, the road was too bumpy. There was hardly anything they could do about that. Ren Xiaosu sat in the back seat of the point vehicle and gave directions to the driver from time to time. But as Lu Buletin did not trust Ren Xiaosu, he'd specifically assigned 2 band members to sit beside him and keep an eye on him. This led to the point vehicle carrying 5 passengers in total. The 2 band members sitting in the back had standoffish looks on their faces. They used to have plenty of room to spare in the back seats. But with Ren Xiaosu joining them, everyone felt uncomfortable. This group that was planning to pass through the Jing Mountains suddenly looked like they were a special task force established to escort Ren Xiaosu to Stronghold 112. But Ren Xiaosu felt that Lu Buletin was a little naive. With only 1 soldier from the private army driving the vehicle, the remaining 3 were all members of the band. If he really wanted to cause trouble, he could probably kill everyone else in the vehicle in a mere 3 seconds, leaving him the only person alive inside. The stronghold's people did not understand a thing about the living conditions of the refugees. They only knew that it was full of hardships and was very dirty. That was basically all the knowledge they had. The band member sitting next to Ren Xiaosu glanced at him and said haughtily, "You'd better behave yourself and not cause any unnecessary trouble." Ren Xiaosu said unhappily, "I only ate a little of your crackers. Is this really necessary?" The band member raised his voice. "You call that a little? Let me tell you, you had no say over your own life from the moment you joined us, do you understand? Don't overestimate yourself. The band member sitting in the front seat laughed and said, Kid, do you know what'll break when you throw an egg at a rock? Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment. The heart. That band member was taken aback. Whose heart? Ren Xiaosu answered, the hen's heart will be broken. Ren Xiaosu was quite happy with his reply as he managed to show a trace of humanity amid the witty response. That evening, the convoy successfully crossed through a mountain pass in the Yun Range. From here, the terrain opened up, and a large forest could be seen beyond the Yun Range. Ren Xiaosu was gazing out the window, spellbound. A picturesque gully cutting through the vast, lively, and flat land had sprung from the extraordinary craftsmanship of nature. The schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang, had said that this unique landform was formed by the tectonic movement of the Earth's plates. Ren Xiaosu sometimes felt that humans were minuscule in the presence of such majesty. The trees here were flourishing. Only a few muddy paths proved that humanity had been here before. This was also where the band had lost their way during the first expedition. Ren Xiaosu had heard from Mr. Zhang that trees in the tropical rainforest were so dense that it was almost impossible to pass through. However, the forest north of here was still relatively sparse. Only the grass seemed to be growing a little taller than usual. In the evening, the convoy finally arrived at the clearing that Lu Buletin had talked about. Lu Buletin jumped out of the vehicle and laughed loudly. Let's set up camp here for today. Everyone, get some rest and eat something. The moment he finished speaking, Ren Xiaosu walked towards the pickup truck. But Lu Buletin immediately stopped him. Ren Xiaosu said in surprise, What? Lu Buletin sneered. We didn't bring your share of the food and water, so resolve it by yourself. But in reality, Ren Xiaosu knew that even if he had not eaten the crackers, Lu Buletin would still have treated him with the same bad attitude. Ren Xiaosu had already expected to not be given any of the convoy's food. However, he was surprised at how upfront they were about it. It was better this way, honestly. Ren Xiaosu was quite relaxed about it. This way, he would not have anything to worry about. And he had been prepared for the current situation. He turned around and walked to the forest, but Lu Buletin asked in panic, Where are you going? If you run away now, you'll never be able to return to the town at Stronghold 113. If Ren Xiaosu were to leave, they would have wasted their time again today. Without a guide, it would be impossible for them to pass through this forest and find their way to the Jing Mountains. It had to be said that Ren Xiaosu was fairly impressed by these people. It took another 5 days to get to the Jing Mountains from here. Last time, they were fortunate to have lost their way early on and eventually found their way out of the forest. If they had walked for another few days and gone deeper, they would probably not have been able to get out. It would not just be a waste of a day if that happened. These important people who were used to living comfortably in the stronghold had not yet realized whose territory they were in. Of course, Ren Xiaosu understood that people were suspect to cognitive inertia. It was not as though the important people in the stronghold had only just started despising the refugees. As such, it should be expected for them to be unable to change their mindset so soon into the expedition. Ren Xiaosu turned around and grinned. I'm just going to look for something to eat. What are you panicking for? I wasn't panicking. Lu Buletin explained in embarrassment, I just wanted to remind you that the previous guide died around this area. Don't follow in his footsteps by somehow dying in this place and wasting our time. The previous guide had brought them here and then led them the wrong way forward. In the end, when everyone felt that they had been going in the wrong direction after walking for several days, they decided to return back to the Yun Range. However, that guide suffered an unfortunate end in the morning when he went to the river to wash his face. As they were talking, a band member exclaimed, There's some animal tracks on your side of the ground. Ren Xiaosu frowned. What wild animals could be here? Very few wild animals would live at the edge of the forest. Besides, when humans started constructing the strongholds, the larger beasts were shut out on the outside of the stronghold's perimeter. Very few large beasts could get through the defenses on the outside of the stronghold perimeter and get into the zone around Stronghold 113. Like the wolves that had attacked the factory, such examples were rare. Everyone went over to see what the animal tracks on the ground looked like. The soldiers were unconcerned. What was there to be afraid of when they had guns with them? But when they saw the tracks, they were all stunned. The animal tracks continued all the way into the forest, and each footprint looked about half the size of a person's head. When the soldiers saw this, all of them immediately raised their guns and nervously aimed into the depths of the forest. For some reason, the troops of the private army suddenly felt unsafe even with their guns. "We didn't see these tracks when we were here last time, right?" someone said in a trembling voice. No, someone shook their head. When Ren Xiaosu observed the tracks, he knew exactly what kind of animal it was and felt relieved. Then he gazed at the clearing where the band was going to set up camp. He immediately noticed some garbage that was left behind by the group the previous time they were here. There were a lot of food scraps still lying around on the ground. He said in a serious tone, "It's a bear. It was attracted to the food scraps that y'all left behind the last time." Lu Buletin said with a doubt, "Nonsense. Do you think I've not seen what a bear's paws look like?" Ren Xiaosu followed the tracks into the forest. He was not kind enough to tell everything that he knew to the band and private troops. Ahem, it could also be a boar too. The group behind Ren Xiaosu could only watch helplessly as he went into the forest. He seemed fearless of the tracks and the dangers lurking inside the forest. "That kid is too bold." Lu Buletin gasped. "Does he not want to live?" The soldiers lowered their guns. If there were any terrifying beasts in the forest, it would not be too late for them to raise their guns if they heard Ren Xiaosu scream. These soldiers looked completely unafraid, but the trembling voice from earlier had revealed that they were just putting on a brave front. Ren Xiaosu was moving around in the forest. In reality, he could tell from a glance that these were the hoof prints of a deer. He followed the deer tracks because it was usually possible to find a source of water or river by following the tracks of large animals in the forest. Like humans, they needed to rehydrate at certain intervals. Besides, he also intended to go to the river to understand why that guide died. According to Lu Buletin's account of the incident, the guide was washing his face in the river when he got chewed to pieces by something. As a result, he died on the spot. Ren Xiaosu muttered, "What an idiot." Even though it was well known that animals were evolving, it was common knowledge that herbivores still ate grass and carnivores still ate meat. This guide was probably like many of the others in town who thought that fish only survived by feeding on aquatic plants. However, Ren Xiaosu had read from a perfectly preserved book at school that freshwater fishes like the northern snakehead and catfish were carnivores, while the remaining ones were mostly omnivores. However, there were basically none that were herbivores. Would any fish refuse such a large piece of meat like your face when it gets placed right in front of its mouth? Ren Xiaosu was glad that he understood the power of knowledge and that he had also been learning all this time. Otherwise, he might have ended up dying by trapping himself as that guide had done. He followed the tracks and kept walking. As deer were one of the gentler creatures in the forest, nothing would typically happen if you did not provoke them. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu noticed a trail of sawdust-like matter on a tree. This was obviously left behind by termites after they had gnawed on the wood. He looked at the base of the tree, and, indeed, there was an abnormal dirt mound wrapped around the tree roots. Ren Xiaosu trampled on the dirt mound and destroyed it with very little effort, exposing the brown termites on the inside. The termites were crawling around rapidly within the nest and looked to be about the size of a pinky finger pad. Although these termites were not tasty, they were full of nutrients. Importantly, many of the townspeople had been suffering from malnutrition for years. Usually, they would use termites and termite eggs to supplement their diets, and some people would be so happy at finding a termite's nest that it would keep them smiling for days. But these termites could not be eaten raw in fear that they might secrete formic acid out of their bodies. Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu was not so desperate that he needed to eat these termites in order to survive. After the nest was destroyed, the termites scrambled around at a loss. Before they could figure out why their nest had collapsed, Ren Xiaosu tore off a large leaf off the branches of the tree and used it to wrap up a small piece of the termite nest, on which some termites were still crawling. He broke off a tree branch and trimmed it slightly with his bone knife, turning it into a simple spear. With that, he was ready to catch some fish. Before walking far away, Ren Xiaosu turned around and came back again. He poked around at the termite nest with his bone knife for a while until he located the plump termite queen. He took her along with him as well. The termites had suffered complete disaster. Ignoring bioethics, this could simply be described as losing both one's home and mother. The closer Ren Xiaosu got to the river, the warier he became. Although it was past the evening period when living creatures gathered to drink at the riverside, he still needed to be careful. If any of the wild animals arrived here late due to matters at home, Ren Xiaosu might just bump into them. But to his relief, he was not that unlucky. Ren Xiaosu unwrapped the leaf containing the piece of the termite nest and threw it into the river. As the current was not rapid at this time, he did not have to think of how to build a stoneware one in the river. Right after, he used his bone knife to cut open the palm-sized termite queen and threw her into the river as well. Then he began to wait patiently while holding the sharpened branch. The moonlight tonight was particularly bright. Otherwise, Ren Xiaosu would not have seen what was in the river. As the termite queen and her nest drifted slowly downstream with the current, Ren Xiaosu followed it from the river bank. All of a sudden, a silhouette appeared and swam under the floating termite nest. The surface of the water roiled, and a large fish appeared with its mouth wide open as it tried to swallow the termite queen and nest in one gulp. But as it opened its mouth, Ren Xiaosu's sharpened branch struck it. Ren Xiaosu had previously used this method to catch fish as well. As his speed and strength were much worse at the time, it took him many tries before he succeeded in catching one. However, that was the past. His movements used to be slower than a fish's, but he had gotten much faster than them by now. Ren Xiaosu retracted the branch with lightning speed, the large, black fish struggling non-stop on it to no avail. Ren Xiaosu cautiously moved away from the river bank. It seemed that the blood of the black fish had attracted something bad. Below the river's surface, a dense mass of silhouettes swarmed together. Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Are these the silhouettes of fish? He immediately cut open the large, black fish on the shore and threw all of its internal organs back into the river. He could not bring the fish back to the campsite and slice it open there because that would leave a bloody scent around the campsite. If cracker crumbs could attract a huge deer, who knew what the scent of blood could attract? Although there shouldn't be any bears or the likes in the vicinity, there was no harm in being cautious. Moreover, the roasted fish meat and bones that were left over from a meal would have to be dumped as far away as possible. A second later, a frenzy erupted in the river. Countless fish scrambled to feed on the bloody organs, and they were even biting one another. Once a fish got bitten, it would immediately end up as food for the other fish. What a brutal river! What would happen if a person had fallen in? All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu was stunned, because he noticed that all the fish had swam away in a hurry. Ren Xiaosu turned around and left without any hesitation. Anything that could frighten away such vicious fish was probably something that he should not mess with. On the way back to the campsite, Ren Xiaosu kept thinking about what kinds of changes the current wilderness had gone through. Why were the wild animals evolving, yet there didn't seem to be any changes in humans? No, there were some changes. For example, there was Zhang Baogen, who had demonstrated his superpower to him. Or Yan Liuyuan and himself. Weren't they all different from before? When Ren Xiaosu returned to the campsite, the band and the soldiers were eating porridge and canned food. When everyone saw the fish that Ren Xiaosu was holding, they were stunned. In the afternoon, they had thought they would see Ren Xiaosu make a fool of himself. This was because Ren Xiaosu was only wearing a loose jacket, and they knew at a glance that he had not brought along any dried food with him. So when Lu Buletin told Ren Xiaosu to handle his meals by himself, everyone gloated at him. They were all quite annoyed with Ren Xiaosu, this refugee kid who constantly gave them an inexplicable feeling of unease. However, they could not tell what it was that made them feel so. But now, while they had to make do with canned luncheon meat in the wilderness, the smell of Ren Xiaosu's roasted fish drifted over. Ren Xiaosu had brought along a metal cup, a bone knife, and a box of matches with him for this journey. These necessities were part of his survival kit whenever he went into the wilderness. Of course, he could have left the matches behind since he knew other techniques for starting a fire. But if he could save some trouble by bringing matches along with him, why would he want to make it more difficult for himself? The matchbox didn't take up a lot of space anyway. Lu Buletin wrinkled his nose when he smelled the roasted fish. No big deal, it's only a fish. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu heard the voice from the palace say, "Quest, good things should be shared with others." Ren Xiaosu was stunned for some time. He picked up the branch that the fish was skewered on and walked to Lu Buletin. Lu Buletin's eyes lit up as he said in a reserved tone, "What, are you going to invite us to eat the fish?" "Well, I guess we can. What are you thinking?" Ren Xiaosu said, "I was only showing it to you to share my happiness." Lu Buletin was confused. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 dexterity. Alright. Ren Xiaosu was overjoyed. There were many ways of sharing after all. Lu Buletin flew into a rage from shame. "Ren Xiaosu, do you really think that I would have any of your fish?" Ren Xiaosu looked at the fish that was about half a meter long and felt that a person would not be able to finish this on their own. So he looked at Lu Buletin and said, "I'll trade half of the fish for 3 bottles of water." Lu Buletin said without hesitation, "Deal." Ren Xiaosu wanted to trade his food for some water because it was really troublesome for him to find water. Initially, he had planned to go to the river to get his water but gave up on the idea after being frightened by what he saw there. He could also look for pine needles as his water source, but it would be too slow to squeeze the water out of them bit by bit. So he might as well make it more convenient for himself by using something that he did not require in exchange for some water from the other party. With 3 bottles of water, he could drink 1 bottle tonight and leave the other 2 bottles for the journey. Come, everyone, come and have some fish." Lu Buletin took out a pot they had brought along and laid half of the fish that Ren Xiaosu had given to them in it. But what Lu Buletin had not expected was that the group of soldiers had already distributed the fish among themselves before Luo Xinyu, Yang Xiaojun, and he could even get to eat it. Lu Buletin looked at Luo Xinyu in embarrassment. He could never have expected the soldiers to be such selfish people. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was sitting alone beside his personal fire pit while the others congregated around the larger campfire. Both sides drew a distinct line between themselves as though they were people from 2 different worlds. Suddenly, Yang Xiaojun got up and went over to sit down across from Ren Xiaosu. She calmly said, "Fish." Ren Xiaosu was so surprised to find her tone unusually calm that he could not come up with a reason to reject her. The light of the campfire was flickering against the figure of the girl. Ren Xiaosu started wondering if the girls from the stronghold were all as beautiful like her. "But, lady, can you move the gun away from me first? You have perfect firearms proficiency and you're pointing a gun at me, so I can't help but feel a tad nervous." Ren Xiaosu had never robbed anyone before, but he hadn't been robbed before either. This was the first time he'd experiencing something like this in his life. "I'll let you have 2 bites, just 2 bites." Ren Xiaosu said firmly. The black fish was a little too big, in fact. It was so big that Ren Xiaosu didn't think he could finish eating half of it. But even if he could not finish eating it, it did not mean that he should get robbed at gunpoint by someone for it. He saw Yang Xiaojun take out a small salt shaker from her tracksuit's shirt pocket and sprinkled it over the fish while holding a black pistol in her other hand. She was not being courteous with Ren Xiaosu at all. Ren Xiaosu had tried guessing what kind of person Yang Xiaojun was. This reticent girl always looked calm and composed. Ren Xiaosu guessed that the girl had a cold and callous personality, but he did not expect her to be so temperamental. From the moment she sat down, Yang Xiaojun had only said one word, fish. Her temper was like a turbulent current hidden under the calm surface of a sea, frightening others. When Ren Xiaosu saw that Yang Xiaojun had already sprinkled the salt evenly all over the fish, he couldn't hold it in any longer. He looked at Yang Xiaojun and asked, "Do you have any cumin?" Yang Xiaojun looked up at him. "No now." Ren Xiaosu took a careful look at the gun in Yang Xiaojun's hand. It was an M9, a simple and durable handgun. Of the knowledge covered by his advanced firearms proficiency, it seemed like the M9 was still the pistol he was most familiar with. Did that mean that Yang Xiaojun used the M9 the most? Yang Xiaojun's hands were not big, but she was able to hold the gun tightly in her hand without any signs of trembling. As such, there was something special about her when she was gripping the M9. The net weight of this gun fully loaded was only 1.2 kilograms, and it was made entirely out of an aluminum alloy. Perhaps that was the reason Yang Xiaojun chose to carry this gun. After Yang Xiaojun finished sprinkling the salt, she turned to Luo Xinyu and said, "Come and eat the fish." Ren Xiaosu was confused. "I was only going to let you have 2 bites. Why would you invite someone else to have some?" While they were conversing, Lu Buletin and Luo Xinyu had gotten up happily and walked over to them. However, Yang Xiaojun pointed her gun at Lu Buletin. "Go back, the owner of this fish does not welcome you." Lu Buletin stood awkwardly in place as he did not know whether to sit down or continue standing. He had not expected Yang Xiaojun to say something like that. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. At this point, he could not tell what Yang Xiaojun's way of doing things was. She seemed a little interesting. Yang Xiaojun turned to look at Ren Xiaosu. "We'll just have 2 bites each, nothing more." Luo Xinyu sat down and curiously sized up Ren Xiaosu. The atmosphere seemed to have livened up a bit. She laughed and said, "I won't eat your food for nothing either. Here, I'll let you have 2 bites of this chocolate in return." Luo Xinyu then took out a large piece of chocolate from her pocket and handed it to Ren Xiaosu. She looked to be making a trade. Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought before taking the chocolate from her. This was his first time seeing the real thing. He had only ever heard Mr. Zhang talking about the high-calorie food that could quickly replenish one's physical strength. However, Old Wang's grocery store in town only sold ordinary white sugar, and it was extremely expensive too. There was no such thing as chocolate in his store. It was as though 2 bites had become a tacit agreement between everyone. No one was allowed to eat any more than that. Ren Xiaosu took the chocolate and removed the wrapper from it. Then he opened his mouth as wide as possible and stuffed all of the chocolate into his mouth in one shot. Luo Xinyu was dumbfounded. Even Yang Xiaojun was giving Ren Xiaosu a blank stare. After Ren Xiaosu finished slowly chewing on the chocolate, he thought for a moment, then said to Luo Xinyu, "You still owe me another bite." Luo Xinyu was surprised. Yang Xiaojun was speechless. The chocolate was delicious. Ren Xiaosu thought, even the food in the stronghold is different from what we have in town. The crackers were so sweet and tasty, and the chocolate had an exotic taste with a bitterness before the sweetness set in. Ren Xiaosu felt that he had to find a way to trade for more of such food with Luo Xinyu and the others during the journey. When he returned to town, he could let Yan Liuyuan and Xiaoyu eat whatever he brought back with him. Luo Xinyu had wanted to get a little closer to Ren Xiaosu as she felt that he had a unique survival skill. If anything were to happen along the way, he could take care of her. People like Luo Xinyu were always smooth operators, tactful in their dealings. How else could they coax the genuine big shots in the stronghold into flocking to them? But Luo Xinyu did not expect Ren Xiaosu to be so difficult to get along with. Rather, she always felt that there might really be something wrong with Ren Xiaosu's head. Luo Xinyu took 2 small bites of the fish and returned back to her campfire. She took another piece of chocolate from the vehicle and gave it to Ren Xiaosu. He did not eat it, instead stuffing it into his pocket. At this time, Ren Xiaosu turned to look at Yang Xiaojun. He saw her opening her mouth as wide as possible and chomp down on the fish, biting off almost a quarter of the remaining portion in one bite. Ren Xiaosu was shocked. As a girl, can't you be a little more reserved? Even Li Yuqian, the strapping girl from town, does not eat with such manners. All right. Ren Xiaosu had half a fish left after exchanging half of it for water. Now that Yang Xiaojun had taken 2 bites from it, there was only a quarter of it left. But for some reason, Ren Xiaosu felt that Yang Xiaojun wasn't putting on airs. Everything that she did was straightforward. It was so much better than how the celebrity, Luo Xinyu, acted. However, when Ren Xiaosu saw Yang Xiaojun turning to look at him, he quickly licked the fish in his hands. Want some more? Yang Xiaojun walked away with an expressionless face. Don't carry the chocolate around on your person. It'll melt. That night, everyone set up their tents and encamped. These people had brought along brightly colored tents in the vehicle's trunks. It was just enough for 2 people to share a tent. Only Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu had personal tents. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu was focusing on dumping all of the fish bones and scraps at least 100 meters away before returning to set up his own temporary bed. The others sat in their tents as they curiously watched Ren Xiaosu, who was fussing around the campsite. They thought, so these are wilderness survival techniques. It does look like he is extremely skilled at them. They saw Ren Xiaosu shift the original campfire and build another one with a lot of pine twigs and logs of hardwoods that tended to burn longer. Ren Xiaosu had already extinguished and cleaned up the original campfire, and he'd covered the hot ground with plenty of pine needles. These pine needles were readily available in the woods and could be found in the thick foliage all around. That kid even made himself a bed. Lu Buletin said as he watched Ren Xiaosu lying comfortably on the pine needles. As it was late fall, it must have been warm and comfortable on the extinguished campfire. Moreover, another campfire was burning beside him. It looked really cozy. In contrast, the soldiers' tents were set up tightly around the campfire, so the band members were forced to endure the cold with their tents situated further away from the campfire. Fortunately, though, they had blankets to cover themselves with. Otherwise, they didn't know how they would have gotten through the night. Meanwhile, Yang Xiaojun had set up her tent beside Ren Xiaosu's campfire. She wasn't courteous to him at all. Ren Xiaosu opened his eyes and looked over at Yang Xiaojun's tent. He saw that the flap of her tent was not closed. In this way, it would be convenient for her to observe any movements in the surroundings, and the gun in her hand was still pointed in Ren Xiaosu's direction. No, it wasn't only that. There was another gun in her other hand as well, and it was pointed in the direction of the soldiers' tents. It was obvious that everyone was in deep sleep as there was loud snoring coming from the tents. Although the larger beasts had been kept outside the stronghold perimeter, these people were still too careless. However, Yang Xiaojun's breathing was even and light. It was obvious that she had not entered deep sleep. Ren Xiaosu felt that it was normal for him to be cautious because he had seen a lot of people getting stabbed to death in their sleep at night. But what kind of environment did Yang Xiaojun live in for her to develop a similar habit? He felt that a person's past experiences would determine their current thoughts and habits. Yang Xiaojun must have gone through some very dangerous situations in the past. At dawn, Ren Xiaosu went to check on the place where he had dumped the fish bones before everyone else woke up. He had specially set aside some scraps last night to see if any wild animals would get attracted by it. A lot of people feared wild animals because they felt that they were not afraid of humans due to their ferocity. However, wild animals were not that reckless. In fact, most of them were exceedingly cautious. Usually, a solitary animal would leave when they spotted so many tents set up in an area. But as the fish scraps and bones were dumped far away from the campsite, it should attract some wild animals and make them leave behind some tracks. Ren Xiaosu carefully approached the area where he dumped the fish scraps and bones. He kept an eye on his surroundings for any signs of beasts that could have been there before him but saw nothing suspicious. But upon reaching the spot, he realized that all of the fish scraps and bones on the ground had disappeared and that there were no signs of any animal tracks around it. Ren Xiaosu immediately took his bone knife out of his sleeves and kept a watchful eye on the surroundings. He kept his guard up as he stepped back cautiously. Was it ants that carried away the fish scraps and bones? This was quite a possibility since ants nowadays had grown to become as large as a human's finger pads. If an ant nest were nearby, it would be quite normal for them to carry it away in just one night. But Ren Xiaosu still held some doubt. When he returned to the campsite, everyone was already packing up and getting ready to set off. They were all folding their tents and stuffing them back into the trunks of the off-road vehicles. By the vehicles, Lu Buletin was still complaining to Luo Xinyu, "Xinyu, you shouldn't have traded the chocolate with him. Does a refugee deserve to eat something like that?" Luo Xinyu ignored him. She also had not expected that she would end up giving 2 bars of chocolate away. The convoy set off. They finally started venturing deep into the woods with the directions that Ren Xiaosu had plotted for them. Sun rays shone through the canopy of the trees, beautifying the entire woods. By this point, everyone had long forgotten about the fear from yesterday night that was brought on by the discovery of the large hoof prints of a deer. Ren Xiaosu could even hear singing coming from the vehicles behind him. A group of soldiers were laughing loudly as they cracked dirty jokes. It felt as though everyone were here on a picnic. There was a short stretch where they had to travel quite close to the riverbank. Ren Xiaosu said to the driver, "Keep as far away from the river as possible." He did not exactly know what dangers lurked in the river, but last night's events had left an intense impression on him. However, the driver thought otherwise. "There's quite a distance between us and the riverbank. Besides, aren't there only some fish in the river? Don't tell me that they can leap ashore and bite you on the face? You'll be fine as long as you don't go swimming." Ren Xiaosu did not say anything else. He made the decision that if there were any danger, he would shake off these fools and make a quick escape by himself. At this moment, the point vehicle that Ren Xiaosu was in braked hard. The driver from the private army said in apprehension, "Look." Ren Xiaosu turned to look and was surprised to see a large red deer. Red deer were huge in size and were the second largest in the family of deer after the moose. They liked living in groups and mainly ruminated on grass, leaves, twigs, tree bark, and fruit for their diet while also enjoying licking mineral salts. The red deer in front of him was probably over 2 meters tall. It was standing quietly on the road and looking at the convoy. The convoy was on edge. These soldiers picked up their automatic rifles and pulled back the charging handles. Suddenly, the woods rustled as 2 smaller deer came out. From the looks of it, they were probably the first deer's fawns. Su Xianchu's voice crackled from the mobile transceiver. "Don't shoot it." The red deer did not look aggressive. It was just looking at the convoy and was probably wondering, "What the hell is this?" in its mind before getting ready to leave again. Everyone in the team heaved a sigh of relief and calmed down. A soldier laughed and said, "It's just a herbivore. Look at how scared you guys are. There aren't any large carnivores around here." Everyone started teasing each other again. It was as though they had not gotten nervous just now. Right at this moment, however, the red deer charged at the convoy. It dropped its head low, its huge antlers coming straight for the point vehicle. The driver of the point vehicle swore as he stomped on the gas and turned into the woods to avoid the deer. He no longer cared if he would hit a tree or roll the vehicle. Fortunately, the point vehicle managed to turn away in time and narrowly avoided the antlers of the huge deer as it went for them. However, the trailing vehicle was not so lucky. The antlers were so tough that they stabbed into the hood of the vehicle like the forks of a forklift truck. Then it tossed its head and flung the entire vehicle away. Right after, the huge deer ran into the woods with its 2 fawns before the soldiers could get out of the other vehicles. It felt like they had escaped after pulling off a big one against the convoy. Some of the soldiers fired frantically at the huge deer that was fleeing, but they didn't hit it. Their marksmanship was surprisingly bad. The point vehicle that Ren Xiaosu and the others were in crashed into a tree next to the dirt road at high speed, deforming the hood. A great amount of white smoke started fuming beneath it. Then someone shouted from the direction of the convoy, "Hurry, someone come and save him." Lu Buletin's voice rang out. "Isn't that refugee a doctor in town? Quick, get him to come over and save him." Ren Xiaosu got out of the vehicle and walked towards the convoy. But when he got there, he realized that the driver of the second vehicle only had a scrape on his arm. What was the big deal? Death had always lingered around the refugees since childhood. They treated it like it was a trifling part of life. Suffering a scrape like this was nothing at all. Ren Xiaosu frowned because he had absolutely no intention of treating the soldier. He did not want to waste his black medicine on someone like that. He was more surprised by the huge deer displaying such aggressiveness at them and wondered why. Lu Buletin shoved Ren Xiaosu and shouted, "Aren't you a doctor? Hurry up and save him." "Aha!" Ren Xiaosu acknowledged him before he began chanting at the driver's wound, "Get well soon, get well soon, get well soon." Lu Buletin was dumbfounded. Who treats a wound like that? What kind of doctor are you? Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought before venturing, "A witch doctor." "Why weren't you practicing medicine if you had actual skill?" But right now, everyone just felt desperate. There's an old saying that can perfectly sum up the current situation: desperate times call for desperate measures. However, Ren Xiaosu's answer shocked them. "What the hell is a witch doctor? Get up!" Lu Buletin brushed Ren Xiaosu aside. He then went to the injured driver and asked in concern, "Are you all right? Does it hurt?" Ren Xiaosu looked around. They had started with 5 off-road vehicles and a pickup truck in the convoy, but only 4 vehicles remained. From the look of things, it would be quite difficult to fix the 2 damaged vehicles. But as Ren Xiaosu did not have any knowledge of automobiles, he would have to wait and see what the private troops had to say about it. Second Lieutenant Su Xianchou led some of his men over to inspect the vehicles. They found that it would be impossible to repair the vehicle that had been thrown upside down by the huge deer, as there were several holes in the engine. But the huge deer did not get away completely unscathed either. Ren Xiaosu saw a small segment of its antler on the ground. It looked like it had been broken off by the recent impact. Lu Buletin went up to Su Xianchou and asked, "Can they be repaired?" "We'll have to take a look at the flipped vehicle first." After checking the vehicle, Su Xianchou said, "This vehicle is definitely beyond repair. But the damage on that one isn't too serious since it didn't hit the tree that fast. The only thing we can do now is salvage parts from the flipped vehicle to fix this one. Only one of them can be repaired." Lu Buletin was taken aback. "What should we do then? There are so many of us here." Su Xianchou thought for a moment and said, "There's still some space in the pickup truck bed." Ren Xiaosu raised his hand. "I'll go." "Go to hell!" Lu Buletin said angrily. This time, Lu Buletin would rather sit in the bed of the pickup himself than let Ren Xiaosu sit there. Su Xianchou quickly had his men grab some tools to repair the vehicles. While they were carrying out the repair works, he ordered the soldiers under him with a frown on his face, "Stay alert to your surroundings, everyone. If any unknown creatures approach us, shoot to kill." Perhaps there was a deeper sense of bureaucratic order among the troops as everyone was focused on carrying out repairs. However, Su Xianchou didn't seem like he was an idiot either. If he didn't remind everyone to stay alert at a time like this, it might be too late if any large creatures approached them while they were repairing the vehicle. That could very well result in many deaths for them. Ren Xiaosu was squatting beside the vehicle and watching the private troops make repairs to it. He wanted to understand how a vehicle worked, as he has always been very eager to learn about more things. In his eyes, large machinery like off-road vehicles held a unique charm. All of these details represented the essence of humanity's knowledge in the rebuilding of civilization. Beside him, Lu Buletin folded his arms and sneered, "Do you even understand what they're doing?" Ren Xiaosu turned around and asked him, "I don't, but do you?" Lu Buletin was taken aback. In fact, he did not understand either. "Look here, you and I both don't understand what they're doing," Ren Xiaosu said slowly. "So what are you jabbering about?" Ren Xiaosu ignored him. The repairs on the vehicle went on from morning till afternoon. In the meantime, Lu Buletin and the others discussed how to divvy up the seating arrangements and the defense strategy they would adopt from here on out. Someone said that if they encountered such creatures again later on, they should just shoot them. But someone else asked about what would happen if the gunshot startled the creatures instead. Judging by the sheer size of that huge deer, bullets might not even pierce its skull unless someone could shoot it in the eyes. But who here had such good marksmanship? That required a score of 9 and above for a standard moving target, right? Ren Xiaosu thought to himself, seems like these people don't know that Yang Xiaojin has perfect firearms proficiency. No one could achieve it other than her. Ren Xiaosu was currently 60% confident that he could successfully shoot the huge deer through its eyes with a pistol from 50 meters away. As such, he felt that Yang Xiaojin would have at least a 90% chance of doing so, perhaps even a 100% chance. Ren Xiaosu furtively observed Yang Xiaojin's reaction. But while the others were discussing how to deal with these beasts, she kept quiet throughout as though it were none of her business. However, everyone also felt a little relieved at the fact that the huge deer was just a herbivore. If it had been looking for food, there probably would have been 3 or 4 deaths in the team. Su Xiancho said, "It's mostly just large herbivores living in the woods. Otherwise, they would have been identified and eliminated as key targets when the stronghold perimeter was first established. We should stay vigilant when we encounter this kind of creature again and try not to alarm them. But if we encounter a carnivore, shoot to kill." "All right, the repairs are finished. Let's get ready to set off." Lu Buletin followed up with, "Now that we've lost a vehicle, we need to reshuffle the seating arrangements." He said to a band member, "Su Xia, you and Cheng Donghang will sit in the bed of the pickup. Please bear with it for the time being." The 2 band members, Su Xia and Cheng Donghang, looked at Ren Xiaosu, hurt. They could have made Ren Xiaosu sit in the pickup truck bed by himself, but Lu Buletin had to worry about Ren Xiaosu eating all the crackers and food. As such, he had to make his own people watch over them. Su Xia and Cheng Donghang grumbled as they climbed into the pickup truck bed. Suddenly, Su Xia let out a piercing scream and fell out of the pickup truck bed. On hearing Su Xia's scream, Ren Xiaosu turned around in shock and saw him holding his neck while wailing. Su Xia's face had already reddened and swelled up. It was as if he were experiencing tremendous pain that he had never experienced before in his life. In just 10 seconds, he was already lying motionless on the ground before anyone could react. He was foaming at the mouth, and his face was turning black and blue. Su Xiancho cautiously approached him with his gun ready. After finding no anomalies nearby, he put a hand under Su Xia's nose to check for breathing. He turned around and said solemnly, "He's not breathing anymore." Everyone stood expressionless in their spots. How could a person die just like that? Lu Buletin trembled as he asked Cheng Donghang, "What happened to him?" Cheng Donghang leaned against the cargo bed and said in horror, "I don't know. When we hopped on together, he suddenly shrieked, scaring me. I didn't notice anything strange either." The rustling in the woods started to sound a little eerie. The trees were still the same, but everyone's mood had changed. This was the first time that one of their people had died on this expedition. Lu Buletin shouted at Ren Xiaosu, "What route are you taking us on? Why didn't we encounter a situation like this last time? Is there something wrong with the route that you are taking us on?" "There's no problem with the route that I took." Ren Xiaosu looked calmly at Lu Buletin. "Although you people live in the stronghold, you should know about how the wilderness has been getting stranger. I don't know why exactly you want to go to the Jing Mountains, but my advice is to turn back immediately and return to Stronghold 113. No, Su Xianchu said coldly, it's an order from the higher UPS that we can't defy this time. We can't go back until the mission has been completed. And that includes all of you as well. Ren Xiaosu felt that something was amiss. There was no way Su Xianchu would risk his life just to complete a mission. There must be some other reason. He couldn't care less about Ren Xiaosu eating the crackers. Obviously, surviving was more important than him eating some crackers. After all, none of them wanted to die out here. Ren Xiaosu ignored him and went over to check on Su Xia's injury. He took Su Xia's hand away from his neck and was surprised to see a long stinger in his neck. Ren Xiaosu immediately recognized what it was, a hornet. He quietly pulled out the stinger with his back facing those standing behind him. He didn't want the others to know how Su Xia had died. The atmosphere in the team was becoming stranger and stranger. As the guide, it would be more advantageous for him if the group learned to be fearful of the wilderness at times. Ren Xiaosu had never regarded himself as a good person, nor was he obliged to tell others about everything. His own survival was more important than anything else. However, Ren Xiaosu also heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it was not some mysterious species that attacked humans, it was all good. In fact, he was also startled by what had happened just now. Ren Xiaosu deduced that a hornet might have flown into the pickup truck bed and remained in there. When Su Xia climbed into the vehicle, his movements alarmed the hornet, so it stung him. But he had not expected that a hornet's sting would be so lethal. Was it the swollen neck that caused asphyxiation? No, that couldn't be. If he had suffocated, it would at least take some time for him to die, certainly not just 10 seconds. It seemed that the source of the problem was the venom itself. When Ren Xiaosu was young, he had also been stung by a hornet before. But only half of his face swelled up for several days, and he did not die from the sting. This wilderness was getting more and more dangerous. Sometimes Ren Xiaosu would have contradictory thoughts. On one hand, he was attracted by the mysterious wilderness and wanted to learn its secrets. On the other hand, he well knew that his curiosity could kill him. There were many different dimensions of a human being, and their thoughts were always complicated. This was a defining factor of humanity. The shadow of death enveloped the entire convoy, whereas Ren Xiaosu had now become the calmest person in the convoy. Su Xianchu came to check on the wound but could only see a red dot on his neck. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu was observing everyone's reaction. He saw Yang Xiaojin frowning as well after she pretended to inadvertently check on Su Xia's wound. Only Ren Xiaosu knew that Su Xia had actually been stung by a hornet that had evolved in the wilderness. Someone said, "What should we do with Su Xia's body? We can't possibly abandon him in the wilderness, right? What else can we do?" Lu Buletin frowned. He had planned to dump Su Xia here as burying him would take them some time. He didn't want to stay a moment longer in this god-forsaken place. Luo Xinyu said, "Put him in the bed of the pickup. Let's get out of here first before we find a suitable spot to bury him." As the leader of the band, what would the others think of her if she dumped Su Xia here? Her reputation would be tainted if word of what happened got out. When Lu Buletin heard her, he immediately made a decision. "Ren Xiaosu, carry Su Xia into the bed of the pickup and sit in there with him." Ren Xiaosu did not mind this at all. Since he hadn't eaten any of the crackers since a day ago, he rather missed them. He was even less stressed with sitting with the corpse. He had also not been frightened by the number of corpses left behind by the wolves when they attacked the factory. People in the stronghold were awed by death, but Ren Xiaosu only had reverence for life. He did not fear death at all. As the convoy set off again, Ren Xiaosu sat in the back of the pickup truck bed, eating crackers and drinking bottled water while muttering to Su Xia, "Why did y'all have to come out here for no reason? See, you're dead now, aren't you? Hey, what exactly does the inside of the stronghold look like? Many of us on the outside are on the verge of starving to death, yet why are we still in the mood to listen to music and support celebrities? Even the pork gets shipped into the stronghold for y'all to enjoy while we can't even get to eat it. Ren Xiaosu was bored and had nothing to do, but the two buddies in the driver and CO driver seats did not think that way. Along the way, they heard Ren Xiaosu's faint voice. The driver felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. He asked his CO driver, "Who is he talking to?" I don't know. He's probably just talking to himself. Do you think there's something wrong with his head?" That evening, the convoy failed to find a suitable place to set up camp and was forced to settle for a small clearing. Everyone was quiet as they were in no mood to chat and brag after all that had happened today. Early the next morning, Ren Xiaosu got up and stretched. He did not go out to find food last night. After all, he had gorged himself on crackers. The chocolates had also been placed in the pickup truck bed. However, Lu Buletin had shrewdly carried them into his vehicle. As there was no space for the box of chocolate in the vehicle, Lu Buletin had to hold onto it for the entire afternoon. Ren Xiaosu had already planned ahead for the day. He did not have to eat in the morning since he could eat whatever he wanted in the cargo bed after the convoy set off and continued journeying. Right at this moment, however, he heard a scream. He whipped his head in the direction of the pickup. A soldier shouted, "Where is Su Xia's corpse? Did any of you see his body?" All of them were stunned. "Isn't it in the pickup? His body has gone missing." This time, Ren Xiaosu felt a tingling on his scalp. What was going on? The corpse had been placed properly in the cargo bed, so how could it just disappear? The typical adult male weighed between 70 and 90 kilograms. So it would be exhausting for a human to carry off the body without making any noise. How could no one have heard any noise when there were so many people around? Who had carried Su Xia's corpse away? Ren Xiaosu suddenly recalled the fish scraps and bones that he had thrown away earlier. It seemed that those had disappeared in the same manner. Without any clues, there was absolutely no way to tell what could have done this. At that time, he had guessed that ants did it. But it couldn't possibly be them this time. No matter how much ants had evolved, they couldn't carry away such a large corpse overnight. This time, Ren Xiaosu was overwhelmed with doubt. He frowned and wondered, what on earth could have done this? Lu Buletin was trembling all over as he looked at Su Xianchu. "Sir, why don't we all head back to the stronghold? This is getting eerie." Su Xianchu was holding his gun and warily pointing it at the surroundings. "I'm just as afraid as you are, but we absolutely can't go back until we've accomplished our mission. From now on, we must act like we're refugees. If we can't go back, you guys can't go back either. But these woods are way too strange." Lu Buletin was almost crying. "Everyone, get into the vehicles and let's get the hell out of this place!" Su Xianchu roared. From this moment onward, Ren Xiaosu held his bone knife in his hand at all times. His mind sharpened, and he would always be on guard against any danger that might approach him. Ren Xiaosu kept wondering about something. If the entity could make something as large as a corpse disappear without a trace, why didn't it do the same to those who were alive? Judging by what the entity was capable of, it could easily inflict heavy casualties on the entire campsite during the dead of the night. Something was amiss. Everyone was sitting in the vehicles except for Ren Xiaosu, who was in the bed of the pickup truck. When they first came here, all of them were chatting, laughing, and even singing with the windows down. But now, all of the windows were shut tight. They were afraid that something paranormal would suddenly get into the vehicles and kill everyone. Everyone felt that the additional layer of a window between them and the wilderness would make them safer. As Ren Xiaosu sat in the cargo bed, the wood slowly disappeared from his sight. The shadows of the swaying leaves seemed to hide a killing intent. Even Ren Xiaosu got a little frightened by it. But what could he do? So he started eating the crackers to calm his nerves. Whenever Ren Xiaosu thought of a conjecture that frightened him, he would eat a cracker to calm down. Actually, Ren Xiaosu felt that sitting in either the pickup or the off-road vehicles were both just as unsafe. Now that his physical fitness had become better, and with a relatively broad view of the surroundings, he could immediately find a way out or make a plan in the event of any danger. Nobody in the entire convoy could outrun him other than maybe Yang Ziajin, whose stamina was unknown. Ren Xiaosu had never considered saving the others if danger descended upon them. After all, he was not an idiot. As their guide, not only did they not provide him with food, they even made him sit in the bed of the pickup. They were already fortunate that Ren Xiaosu did not take revenge on them. Everyone was fleeing like there was a monster chasing after them. Lu Buletin was still persuading Su Xianchu when they got into the vehicle. "Sir, let's turn around and give an explanation to those back at the stronghold. Surely your superior won't be so heartless as to drive you out, right?" But Su Xianchu did not answer him. If it were anyone other than him, his superior might not be as heartless. However, it was a different case for him. In fact, Ren Xiaosu noticed a long time ago that Wang Kongyang and Su Xianchu, both of whom were officers in the private army, had likely offended their superiors before. When a plight arose in the wilderness during the middle of the night, the first person they sent out was Wang Kongyang. After Ren Xiaosu and Luo Xinyu requested for him to be replaced, Su Xianchu became the next in line to be sent out by the stronghold. The successful officers would be enjoying themselves in the stronghold. Only those who were unpopular would get ostracized and be made to perform missions in the wilderness. Why else would anyone be willing to leave home and head into battle in the middle of the night? There was a sense of honor among soldiers before the cataclysm happened. But Ren Xiaosu felt that these soldiers from the private army were nothing like that. In fact, Su Xianchu and Wang Kongyang were both in awkward positions within the ranks of the private army. Their superiors were already looking to suppress them, so with a valid reason like them failing their mission this time, they would probably not be allowed to go back. However, Ren Xiaosu still had some doubts. He glanced beside him and finally asked Yang Ziajin in a whisper, "Are these troops really reliable? The stronghold's defense is dependent on them, but it feels like they'll start behaving like a disorderly mob the moment they encounter any danger." Yang Ziajin gave Ren Xiaosu a look and said something that sounded confusing to him. "The consortium's troops are the consortium's troops. The stronghold's troops are the stronghold's troops. The consortium does not wish for the stronghold to control a powerful military." Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a long time. What were the consortium's troops like? Su Xianchu was obviously shrewder and tougher than the other soldiers. Ren Xiaosu had never seen him smoking or slacking off on their journey thus far, and he always carried himself with dignity. Who were the ostracized officers? Ren Xiaosu knew at least two of them. One was Wang Kongyang, the other was Su Xianchu. Without mentioning Su Xianchu, Wang Kongyang had displayed his meticulousness when he searched Ren Xiaosu back in town. He was completely different from these private troops and even showed his contempt for them in front of Ren Xiaosu. So were Su Xianchu and Wang Kongyang both ostracized because they were unwilling to wallow in the mire with them? By his worst reckonings, Ren Xiaosu thought that even the cigarettes might have been supplied by the consortium. Had the consortium been carefully scheming all these years and finally managed to completely cripple the stronghold's military force? Ren Xiaosu was unable to ascertain this. But as Mr. Zhang had said before, a minority possessed science and technology now, so wouldn't it also be natural for the military to fall under the control of a minority as well? But he still had doubts about Su Xia. Was it true that people who were alive would not get attacked? If not, why didn't anything happen to them? Why was the stronghold so interested in the pre-cataclysm ruins hidden in the Jing Mountains? Could the dangers that they'd faced today have originated at the site of these ruins? Su Xianchu said sternly, "I'm taking over the wartime management of everyone. As for any future plans, none of you have any rights to question me about them." Lu Buletin opened his mouth but stopped short of saying anything. He realized that Su Xianchu had turned serious. At noon, the convoy took a short break at a place called the Rainbow Cliffs. The formation of the Rainbow Cliffs was related to plate tectonics as well. They were cliffs formed by the compression of the Earth's plates and were made up of many colorful rock layers. The private army's troops named it as such when they went out into the woods many years ago to clear out the wild animals from the area. Lu Buletin was wiping his sweat as he supported himself against the cliffs. He said, "It's almost winter, but why is it getting warmer the further we walk north?" Ren Xiaosu sat nearby and belched while saying, "There are several volcanoes up ahead in the Jing Mountains. They aren't extinct yet, so there's a lot of volcanic activity." Many of the people on the team were surprised to hear that, as they had never been to this place before. They always thought that volcanoes were something that was distant from them and never expected several of them in the Jing Mountains. But Su Xianchu was not surprised, as he had already familiarized himself with the terrain around the Jing Mountains based on the private army's briefing for the mission. The private army's troops had also been here before, so it was natural they knew about these volcanoes as well. But Su Xianchu wondered how unprofessional his predecessors in the private army were. After clearing out and eliminating the wild animals in the Jing Mountains, they did not even bother to map out the area. As of now, none of the various major strongholds had even come up with an accurate map of the area. Lu Buletin walked over to the pickup to get some food to distribute to everyone. When he saw that many of the crackers had gone missing again, he nearly passed out. His voice was trembling as he asked Ren Xiaosu, "Why would you eat so many crackers?" Ren Xiaosu burped and patted his chest. "What's wrong with me eating some of your crackers to calm my nerves? I was sitting all alone by myself in the bed of the pickup." Suddenly, a howl came from the north. It sounded so eerie that all of the soldiers raised their guns and pointed them northwards at the main road. They heard Ren Xiaosu say, "Quick, help me up. Let me have another cracker to calm my nerves." Lu Buletin was speechless. Luo Xinyu looked at Ren Xiaosu. "You must know what sound that is." Su Xianchu pointed his gun at Ren Xiaosu. "Don't hide anything from us." Ren Xiaosu raised his eyebrows and said, "That sound comes from the Howling Canyon. We're not far from the large canyon pass that will lead us into the Jing Mountains. When a strong gust of wind passes through the canyon, it makes a sound like that. It's nothing to be scared by." Only now did everyone realize that it was still very useful to have an experienced guide on the team. It wasn't until this time, when they were all fearful, that they began to recognize Ren Xiaosu's value. At the very least, they didn't feel so afraid anymore when they heard the howling. Their original plan was to arrive at the canyon in 3 to 5 days, but the power of fear had accelerated their progress some. If nothing unexpected happened, they could reach the Howling Canyon by this evening. The schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang, had once mentioned in his lectures that all human behavior and motivation stemmed from the fear of death. They ate because they didn't want to die, they struggled just so they could stay alive. But now, they were all caught in a mountain range where death could occur at any time. The possibility of death was like a shot of adrenaline that made everyone even more clear-eyed and eager to get out of this place alive. As the setting sun cast rays from the sky heading into evening, the convoy finally emerged out of the woods and saw the towering cliffs and canyon ahead of them. The cliffs were like giant stairs that had been yanked out of the ground. When they got out of their vehicles, they had to crane their heads so far back their necks felt strained before they could see the top of the cliffs. But when they gazed to the left and right, they couldn't see the end. These were nature's stairs. It was like you could climb into heaven by taking this staircase. The Howling Canyon looked like a thin black line as it stretched out into the distance. But when they approached it, they realized that the canyon was so wide that 5 or 6 cars could pass through it side by side. A howl and whistle was produced when the strong mountain winds blew through the canyon. If someone were standing at the mouth of the canyon, they would hardly be able to stay upright and would almost certainly get knocked over by the wind. The magic and magnificence of nature were given full expression with this display. Suddenly, Lu Buletin shouted, "Everyone, come look at this!" Lu Buletin stood next to entrance of the Howling Canyon and pointed at a section on the cliff wall while shouting, "There's something written on here." Everyone went over and saw that someone had carved the words "Stop here, ye who live" as large as a person's head on the cliff wall. Su Xianchul looked at Ren Xiaosu. Who carved this into the cliff? Ren Xiaosu shook his head. I didn't see these 5 words when I was here last year. Why did you come here? Lu Buletin shrieked. Do you know how far from town this is? You shouldn't have ventured out this far even if you were out hunting. Who the hell are you, really? You must have kept your identity from us. Ren Xiaosu nodded and said, yes, there's something that I haven't told y'all yet. I'm actually the heir of the dragon. Lu Buletin, Su Xianchu, and Luo Xinyu were speechless. There are too many doubts about you right now. Su Xianchu pointed his gun at Ren Xiaosu and said, you must explain exactly why you came out here last year. This area is off the beaten track. Stronghold 113 has not sent anyone to this place in many years, and even though this is the only route linking Stronghold 112 to Stronghold 113, no one from Stronghold 112 has been to our side this past year either. You're likely the only person who's been here this year, so did you carve these words into the cliff? Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, the words are carved in a very high place. I can't reach it without moving a rock over to stand on with how short I am. Besides, I'm just as surprised as y'all are about these 5 words. I'm also incredibly puzzled about who did this. Ren Xiaosu wasn't lying about this. He truly did not carve these words. You haven't given us an explanation of why you came to this place. Lu Buletin roared. Do you know how far from town we are? Everyone looked at Ren Xiaosu. Although they had driven at a slower pace than jogging, they still covered a pretty long distance in 3 days. There was no reason for Ren Xiaosu to come to this place. Ren Xiaosu stayed silent for a moment before saying, last year, I encountered a pack of wolves when I was at the Yuns. They pursued me until I reached this place. This was also the truth. You're bullshitting. Lu Buletin retorted, how could a kid like you survive an encounter with the wolves? Tell me, why did the wolves let you go? I wasn't their target at the time. I just happened to be there. I ran into the woods in a hurry, thinking they would ignore me. I didn't expect them to chase me. As for how I survived, after I entered the Howling Canyon, they stopped chasing me. I hid in there for 2 days and only came out after they left. I don't know my way around the inside of the canyon since I haven't gone that far in myself. Everyone was stunned. Even the wolves stopped chasing when they reached this place? Could something terrible really lurk beyond this canyon? Perhaps some kind person had gone in and discovered the secret of the Jing Mountains, so they left behind a mess on the canyon's cliff wall to warn others not to proceed further. Everyone believed Ren Xiaosu's explanation, but he wasn't telling the full truth this time. Back then, he had indeed been pursued by the wolves, but the truth was that they continued chasing him instead of stopping here. In fact, Ren Xiaosu also wasn't sure how he had survived. He had lost his consciousness shortly after the wolves caught up to him. When he woke up, he was injured all over but the wolves were nowhere to be seen. He was at death's door when he finally struggled back into town. It was only at that time that he realized the horror of the wolves. But it was also after this encounter with the wolves that the black mist started appearing in his mind. Ren Xiaosu had spent the entire year thinking about whether there was any link between the black mist in his mind and him losing consciousness at that time. What exactly had happened while he was unconscious? Someone suddenly said, "Do you guys know anything about those supernatural beings?" Maybe the writing was left behind by one of them. It's not surprising since they can walk around freely in the wilderness. Some of these supernatural beings have long surpassed the realm of normal human beings. The person who spoke was a soldier. However, Su Xianchul looked at him in fury. That's a military secret. Why are you still pretending? Didn't the whole lot of us get sent here because we're all ostracized? How much longer do you think you can stay an officer? The soldier sneered and said, even if we can complete the mission, Do you really think that Ma Xin will let you off when you return? Ren Xiaosu was stunned. The chain of command of the private army was such a mess that the enlisted confronted the officers as they wished. Unknowingly, Ren Xiaosu's impression of the private army worsened. The schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang, had described that the armies from before the cataclysm were well disciplined, which in turn made them into a unified, strong unit. Su Xianchul looked at that soldier. Even if he doesn't let me off, I'll make sure you get cast out before I do. You'd better shut your trap now. Otherwise, I'm going to treat you as a deserter and punish you accordingly. The soldier fell silent, but Lu Buletin and Luo Xinyu started to get curious. We heard that 3 supernatural beings were arrested in our stronghold by the private army some time ago. What happened to them? Su Xianchu deliberated before saying, "It's none of your business. We were just carrying out our superior's orders." "Then are we still heading in?" Lu Buletin pleaded, "Sir, why don't we turn back? It's too dangerous in there." Su Xianchu finally showed signs of wavering. He looked at the sky and said with a sigh, "Since it's getting late, let's set up camp here for the night. We'll discuss whether to stay or go, then make a decision." "How about that?" Lu Buletin and the others agreed. As long as they were not going forward, they were fine with any decision. Ren Xiaosu gazed deep into the canyon. The straight canyon walls on either side looked like they joined with the sky. A small ray of light shone in from a crevice at the top, but this ray of light faded as it made its way down into the canyon. The deeper he looked into it, the darker it became. That same night, some of them did not even want to set up their tents to sleep in as they were afraid it would hinder their escape route. However, Su Xianchu did not allow them to do so. "Get all of your tents set up. It's already late autumn. If you don't have a tent to protect yourselves from the wind, you won't be able to make it out of the Jing Mountains once you fall sick." The group built a bonfire and sat quietly around it. Although they did not dare to go far or venture into the woods again while collecting firewood, they still managed to collect quite a bit of it with their combined efforts. It seemed that the larger the campfire was, the more of a sense of security they felt. This time, Ren Xiaosu did not start a campfire by himself because Su Xianchu requested for him to join their discussion. "What gives him the right to sit here?" Lu Buletin said displeased. "How can we sit together with a refugee?" "Ren Xiaosu, go and sit a little further back." No one rebuked Lu Buletin because there was no reason in offending people like him over a refugee. Everyone had been sitting together in a circle. However, after Lu Buletin forced Ren Xiaosu to sit further out by himself, it suddenly looked like he was just listening in on their conversation. They really needed Ren Xiaosu to give them some suggestions, but in Lu Buletin's opinion, Ren Xiaosu could just answer whatever questions they had from the back. However, Su Xianchu was much more rational than Lu Buletin. Quit discussing irrelevant matters. We have to seriously discuss the issue of whether we're continuing ahead or returning to town. Su Xianchu had previously insisted on heading to the Jing Mountains because he had to consider his future and situation in the stronghold. However, he had also become disheartened with the current circumstances. Even if he were expelled from the stronghold and became a refugee, it would still be better than dying out here. The soldiers trusted the cold and emotionless guns in their hands. But when they realized that even guns might not be able to solve their problems, a great fear started growing in the soldiers. Their greatest reliance could no longer provide them with a sense of security. When Su Xianchu saw that everyone had calmed down, he said, "We're faced with a dilemma. On one hand, we can walk through the canyon where unknown dangers lurk, but there could also be the existence of some creatures that even supernatural beings can't cope with. Otherwise, it's very difficult to explain why someone would come all the way here by themselves and leave behind a warning saying 'Stop here, ye who live.'" Su Xianchu continued, "But on the other hand, there are hidden dangers in the woods as well. The mysterious death of Su Xia and the disappearance of his body are unsolved mysteries. So we're also unsure of what we'll encounter on our way back." Luo Xinyu suddenly said, although we did face some dangers in the WADs, our forces have not been wiped out. After all, so many of us are still alive after getting here, but it's very difficult to say what danger lies beyond the canyon. I still think it's better to face the dangers in the woods. After passing through the woods, only one person on the team had died. Even if another person died on their way back, they might not be that unfortunate one. Therefore, turning back was probably the best choice for them. But Su Xianchu was still in a predicament. Should he really return? If he did, how would his superiors at the stronghold make things difficult for him? Everyone fell silent again. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yang Xiaojun and noticed she still looked calm and composed. It was as if she didn't care about whether they were going back or staying here. Wait a minute, could Yang Xiaojun be that legendary supernatural being? Ren Xiaosu could not confirm it. But for some reason, he suddenly felt that Yang Xiaojun seemed to have a different purpose from everyone else in coming here. When they were eating the fish, Ren Xiaosu thought that Yang Xiaojun had come along to protect Luo Xinyu as they were friends. But the problem was that Luo Xinyu and Yang Xiaojun did not look like they had a particularly close friendship. Their relationship was just like that of employer and employee. Ren Xiaosu rather yearned to see the supernatural beings that Su Xianchu and the others mentioned. However, he did not feel envious of them because he was one of the supernatural beings himself. It was just that he had not grown that strong yet. Luo Xinyu observed Su Xianchu's expression and said, "Sir, are you worried about the situation you'll be caught in if we return to the stronghold? You don't have to worry about that. Once we get back, I can find someone to transfer you out of the private army, even if it means arranging for you to do clerical work." Su Xianchu was taken aback. "Are you serious?" Luo Xinyu said earnestly, "Of course, I still have quite a bit of influence in the stronghold." Her words seemed to be quite effective as Su Xianchu finally made up his mind. "All right, let's set off early tomorrow morning and return to the stronghold." At this moment, the wind in the canyon stopped blowing. When the loud howling ceased, the entire woods fell silent. In this moment of silence, everyone's hair stood on end when they suddenly heard the sound of chewing coming from the pickup. Lu Buletin trembled and said, "What's that sound? I think it's coming from the bed of the pickup." Everyone looked over in horror. They couldn't figure out why there were sounds coming from the bed of the pickup when it was only their daily necessities in there. Moreover, Ren Xiaosu was also out here with them, so what was making that sound? Su Xianchu's expression turned black after getting frightened. "I don't believe there's something that isn't afraid of bullets." He then signaled for the private troops to move slowly toward the pickup. The chewing had been going on for a while now, but they could not hear it over the loud wind blowing in the canyon. Ren Xiaosu also stood up. It seemed that after his physical fitness had gotten stronger, he did not feel cold even though he was only wearing a thin jacket in late fall. He had held his bone knife in his hand the entire time. When he turned around and looked at Yang Xiaojun, she also had her hand on the pistol she carried with her. Su Xianchu and the others slowly approached the pickup. All of a sudden, a shadowy figure jumped out of the pickup truck's cargo bed and frightened everyone. They immediately started shooting before they could even process what had happened. The dark figure encountered a fierce barrage of gunfire while in midair and was sent flying backwards after getting hit by several bullets. At this moment, they heard another sound coming from the pickup's cargo bed. Without pausing to think, Su Xianchu and the others started shooting mercilessly at the bed of the pickup. Click, click. The empty guns made clicking noises. These soldiers had finished firing all their rounds in the magazines and the pickup was now in a terrible condition. It was full of holes and the fuel tank had started leaking. Someone actually fired at the fuel tank and left a bullet hole in it. However, Ren Xiaosu was not worried that the pickup would explode. This was because he had the relevant knowledge with his advanced firearms proficiency. Unless fire bombs are used, it is very difficult to blow up a fuel tank by shooting at it with guns. Su Xianchu slowly approached the pickup as he got ready to check out the shadowy figure that had jumped out. But after he saw it, he was somewhat frustrated. What frightened them turned out to be just a rat stealing their food. How did that rat grow to become so big? Lu Buletin was still in a state of shock. It's almost the size of 2 human heads. Su Xianqiu cast aside his fear and looked into the pickup. There was another rat in there that had already been riddled with bullets. It turned out to be just a false alarm. Everyone was becoming too nervous and would get suspicious of any slight movements around them. It was time to return to the stronghold. No one could withstand this tremendous mental pressure if they remained here. But at this moment, Ren Xiaosu spun around and looked at the route they'd come from. He saw a silver wolf standing on the top of a cliff not far away looking right at them. It was the Wolf King. This is bad. Why have they come back so quickly?